Good afternoon. Welcome to this February 26th school board work session. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We do have for the board members just a quick update. Discipline will be at 4:45, Madam Superintendent?
That's correct.
And we'll have it here in this room, so it won't be necessary for us to go to the large conference room, or what do you call it, auditorium. Is there another announcement?
Executive is moving to
We have an executive session at
2:20.
2:20. We have a lot to do, of course, so just bear in mind, as we discussed in the training this morning, that we can move items to another work session agenda if we're not able to get through them. So we want to be brief this afternoon and try to move this along as quickly as possible. So with that, Madam Superintendent, I turn the floor over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. The item that you have before you this morning is coming from Dr. Steinke in our Learning Support Division. It is in response to several of our board members asking for more training support for our students with disabilities and opportunities review. So before you sitting today, you have Dr. Steinke, and she's going to introduce our guest with the District Management Group, Nate Leverson. So.
Good afternoon. Before we get to Mr. Levinson, I wanted to draw your attention to, you should have two handouts. One is a summary of the report recommendations that came from the Urban Special Ed Collaborative back in 2007 when they did their last review here in the district. They made several recommendations in 3 areas. So what I've done is compiled each of those recommendations and then give you just a brief update on where we are on each of those recommendations and the things that we've done that I've recognized over the past and being here. This is for you just to review. If you have any other questions or anything specific to it, you can of course send those to me later and we'll address them in a little bit more detail. But I want to give most of the time this morning to Mr. Levinson. He is the Managing Director for District Management Group. The district is a member of that organization and has been for several years. And they provide a great opportunity for us to have some wonderful expertise coming from outside of our district and actually our state and years of experience in special education. So I'm excited about having him here. So Nate, we'll go over to you.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
So what I was hoping to do is spend 5-7 minutes at the most sharing a brief overview of our firm and the work, and leave the rest of the time for your questions. That way I know we're talking about the things that matter most to you. I did spend 6 years on the school board, so I have some sense of, well, then I was a superintendent, so I've seen it from both sides. So just a brief bit about the organization itself, because I think this is really important. It drives all the work we do. Special education, ESE, struggling students is about half of the work we do. We're a firm of about 45 people. But no matter what we're working on, we always have 3 goals, and I want to make sure everybody knows that's exactly why we're here today. First and foremost, it's to improve outcomes for students. And as important a goal as that is, it's not sufficient. We believe we have to make the work more sustainable for your staff. And I think in the area of ESE, we have 50 states, and 50 states have a shortage of folks who want to do this work. And then we think it is in part because the job is very hard, and there are things that you can do that are really good for the kids, but also make the work more sustainable for your staff. And lastly, as you try to do those 2 things, you have to do it within whatever budgets you have. So how do you do more and better for your kids and more and better for your staff and still stay within your budget? And if you can do all 3 of those at once, that's something worth talking about. And that is the focus of our work here. I think that it's important to recognize that as an organization, we are national in scope, and we believe that brings a lot of value in that I've personally worked in 32 states now with over 200 school districts. If you think what you do is normal, you're fooling yourself, because there is no normal. There's huge variation out there. Some of it better, some of it perhaps not as good. But we bring a great deal of experience both from districts across the country, many your size and larger. also worked with districts in the state, so we're familiar with your context. And I think most importantly, we've worked with schools and districts that have really closed the achievement gap. And we have done an enormous amount of research as well. So we try to combine what really works and what the research has shown as well. The process we have built, and we call it an opportunities review, because it really is looking for the opportunities to improve. It is not an audit, because I feel like an audit can be very backwards looking, good, bad, A, B, C. Every district's on a journey. Wherever you are, the question is where do you go next? And we believe that we will be coming back with essentially 2 short lists. Because a short list is better than a long list. The first list is things that are going well, because good news never gets enough attention. And secondly, if you were going to make a small number of changes, what would have the greatest impact on kids' outcomes, their lives? Because, but honestly, if there was something really quick and easy to do that'd make a world of difference for kids, you would have already done it. So it says if all you've got left are big things, and we want to make sure that we are having a narrow focus, a focus that is consistent with your culture, with your history, with your particular values, and the rest of the strategic priorities, so that this fits into your day job and doesn't become a parallel track to all the important things you're trying to do. We have created a process, again, we've used this more than a few hundred times, that is designed not just to get you some good information, but to really build momentum for change. If at the end of the day, all we deliver is a report, then we have all failed. Because kids don't benefit from the reports, they benefit from the changes that can come from it. And the process is intentionally designed, and I'll talk about that in a moment, to build the support, to build the buy-in. I think the other piece that's really important to understand, and this sometimes confuses people, yes, we're looking at special education, but we're looking at much, much more than that. We use the term struggling students. It's not one that you will hear from the state or the feds. But for kids with disabilities, yes. But for kids with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges, half of which or more do not have a disability, are not in the ESE system, we want to look at their needs as well. You will have kids who are struggling who don't fall into either of those categories. They're having a hard time learning to read or a hard time learning math. We want to address their needs. You've got kids who are learning English. And it turns out that not all, but many of the best practices, things that have really moved the needle for one group, helps the other group as well. And we want to make sure we're not starting with the student's label and starting with their needs and see where the research takes us. The other piece that's important to note, even on the special education side, fortunately, the vast majority of your students spend the vast majority of the day in the gen ed setting. So fully 50% of our review will look at what is going on in the gen ed classrooms, because that too has to support students with disabilities and other students who struggle. We have spent almost 15 years reviewing the research and studying schools around the country, and have tried to solidify what has actually worked. People generally refer to it as both practical and common sense, but not always common practice. So to know that there is a very strong research base to what we're looking for. I will not spend the time now, unless people have questions later, going through what all those practices are, but at the highest level, it says focus on first general education, making sure that core instruction is delivering what it needs to. A hyper focus on literacy. If you did both of those things, that's still not enough. Kids are going to need more time to learn. So that moves us into scheduling and things like that. But when we're giving them more time to learn, you've got to meet them exactly where they are, and you've got to have the data and to know exactly what a student needs. If you did all of that, sadly, that's not enough, because we don't address the social, emotional, behavioral needs of kids. They can't access all that really good stuff on the academic side, so it's not an either or. And lastly, none of this works unless you've got the right adults, the right teachers with the right skills in front of kids. And you're doing that in a way that those teachers want to stay in the profession, stay in your district. So we want to look at both the, how are you allowing your staff to play to their strengths, and how are you structuring the work so that they say, this is a great place to work and I want to stay here 30 years. Part of what we do that's also fairly unique is because special educators and social workers and psychologists and reading teachers and the like, we ask them to do a million things. And it is easy to get the list of all the things we ask folks to do, and they're so darn nice, they always say yes. It's actually really hard for folks to reflect, particularly a district your size, is what am I doing mostly? And sometimes I think you get false positives about, hey, we do this, or hey, we do that. And it's true, you do it. What if you only do it 10% of the time, and 90% of the kids aren't getting it? So we've created a tool that allows staff, very quick, but it allows staff, and I suspect we'll have a few thousand people participate, they really like it, to tell us exactly what they did for a week. 9 to 9:30, I was in an IEP meeting, 9:30 to 10:30, I was teaching reading, I was doing it in the classroom, or no, I wasn't. And it allows us to share back to you not just all the things you do, but what are you doing mostly? How does that vary by grade level? How does it vary by school? To build a much more comprehensive base. And the other piece, as I said, the goal is to bring about change, not a report. Our experience has been that because this data comes from the fingertips of every staff member in this district, they believe it. It doesn't go through a filter of the state, or doesn't go through a filter of the central office, and we found that this really helps. There's also a two-way or one-way feedback loop where there are other questions that folks get to answer, like what would help make their job more effective and more sustainable. So we're gathering a lot of information from your teachers, because their insights are really important. I will also, before we jump, we also gather a lot of insight from parents, from classroom teachers. We're visiting classrooms. We're going to be holding focus groups with many, many hundreds of people, from paraprofessionals on up to the superintendent. We really want to make sure we are hearing from all the key stakeholders. And then when we're gathered all that information, we want to bring a key set of stakeholders, what we call a guiding coalition, to help us throughout this process as both a sounding board, to be folks who are giving us the political context, the cultural context, the history, and then ask them to help us prioritize. Because again, if we're going to have a short list, which I think is necessary, it's really important that it's the right stuff on the list. So this very broad coalition of folks are going to help us make sure what we're doing is relevant, and they're going to help us prioritize our thinking as well as your thinking. And if we've done our work well, at the end of this process, not only do you have things to celebrate, that they deserve to be celebrated, but you'll also have a very clear focus list that is relevant, fits your culture and your priorities. It was created through a very inclusive process where the voice of parents and teachers and administrators and others have been heard, not just in creating it, but also in helping to create the priorities and even the first steps forward. So that is a fairly quick overview of a very substantive process, and with that, I'd love to take your questions.
Ms. Millard and Ms. Cunningham.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you for your time here today and this presentation. I reached out to some other districts to see what they were doing here in the state of Florida, and talking with Broward County, who has double the size of our ESC population. They used someone from Florida because of their choice was made due to the fact that so much of the Department of Education within our state has mandates that we have to abide by. How can your company meet the needs coming from a different state for Florida Department of Education?
A couple ways. So one, we have worked with both. This is a very similar process with Lake County and Indian River. We have worked with the Superintendent's Association for over 2 years. Then they sponsored a 2-year effort where they've asked us to really travel the state sharing the best practices that I finished about a year ago. So one is we've done a fair amount of work in Florida. Second, for an organization, we've worked in 32 states. An important part of our work is from the very get-go is to come up to speed on each state. And I think I would go the other way, so we will definitely learn Florida and know Florida. I think there's also great value to knowing outside of Florida. And I think there's important sides to both, and I need to work.
I do, I appreciate that. I just know that in Florida, we work like few others,
Mhm.
and that will be a concern of the community. They also were priced lower than what we're gonna invest in this, which is a significant investment. You've mentioned meeting with the stakeholders at the schools, and you talked a little bit about meeting with the community, and I wanted to give the experience of other districts so you could tell me how you would respond. There has been concern with when parents are interviewed, their parents either chosen by the principals or they're a very select group that are being interviewed for this process. How will you go reaching into the community to make sure that we're representing all of our stakeholders?
So a couple ways, and I totally feel, and I know exactly what you're saying, and we don't want, our goal, and I believe the superintendent shares our goal, is to get what is really happening, what do people on the front lines feel and experience. So part of what we will do is certainly work closely with the superintendent. Generally the guiding coalition, which, if you've got a special education and ESE parents group, they tend to be part of the coalition. So it's very important that we know and you know that we have a broad base. And maybe let me, if you don't mind me asking you a question, is there a way you think we could ensure? Is there an organization or a method or an outreach that you think would ensure?
Yeah, there's several community, and I'm even thinking of agencies that we contract with. You'd want to include them if they're coming into our schools. Just making sure we meet all of those stakeholders where they are, because we don't want to create this kind of spend this kind of investment on a report that doesn't represent the entire district. The other thing that this isn't referencing your group, and I'm sure you wouldn't do this, but in the other districts, staff was interviewed amongst their supervisors, and so we hope that that's not what you do. Okay. I had one other thing, but I'm going to let Lori ask a question.
Cunningham?
Sure, okay. My question was, as you perform this special education opportunities review in our district, are you going to go to every school and do this, or are we doing a random sample in some of the districts? What is your plan to do
It's
this?
a combination. So we will, particularly given your size, we will gather feedback from staff in every school. So through electronic means, the schedule sharing and the survey questions, every school and really 100% of special education staff and other roles will participate.
Okay.
We will do focus groups, that is a selected group, selected representatives, and then we will probably get to, if I had to guess, 20 or 25 schools as we go out to visit as well. But we will not step foot in 100%
To
of
the schools.
And
And what is
definitely hear back from.
what is your normal timeline?
This is about 5 months from start to
Is it?
finish.
Okay,
We're planning about 5 or 6 months.
5 to 6 months. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
Just a couple of things, picking up on what Lisa said. Are you, or this may be for the superintendent too, are you open to board members referring people to the coalition in the sense of if we have contacts of our own, is that something that's okay?
Do you all do that?
Yeah, so the
I don't have a problem
coalition,
with it.
so this is good, so let me be 30 seconds step back. We want to be your partners. We are not going to do this to you. We're going to do this with you. So I think, whether it's the superintendent or Kimberly, we're going to want their input at every step of the way. There's this massive amount of co-planning. And so what we would probably recommend is, whether it's board members, and we certainly want to make sure we're getting all the right stakeholders, is to funnel those requests through your leaders, and we will make sure, and they will make sure. But as I said, our goal is to get findings and recommendations that have created buy-in. And the fastest way to prevent that is for key people to feel like they didn't have a ways. So we want to make sure we do it, but I also want to respect the organizational structure.
And can we just step back for a second? How did we get to this point? What's the, like, how what does it mean to be that we're a member of this group? But how does that work?
They're a member with the Superintendent's Association as well, and they do a lot of that work. So when they were talking about, I think Ms. Miller brought up about having all of our structures and review of our support processes, and that they're a big part of already with the FAS associations as it is, as well as that. So I know Dr. Stanky has actually attended several conference or two that they've had, one conference recently that they've had. So, and looking at this, they've done the work in Lake County there, looking at their ESC and reviewing that, and you said Indian River at that point. So looking at what they're gonna do and what was asked of, that's how we got here today with this.
Okay, but just so, but you're a firm. I mean, like, right. Like, I just the way the agenda item reads, it talks about having a membership with the district management group. We're not like a member of you. Like,
No,
right,
no,
right, okay.
No.
Sorry.
It's the Superintendent's Association. Yeah, no.
Okay, all right.
No.
So, all right. And was there any kind of, I asked this of everything. Was there any kind of competitive process for this, or is this just, we just know that?
No, because we already knew we had to, we were actually already talking about doing this, I mean, last year or
Right,
some,
early on.
a while back. Because I'd expressed to Ms. Bird that, you know, after we come in and kind of done some things organizationally over the last several years, we were at a point where it was like, we're ready to take the next step, but I'm not necessarily sure what that next step would be, and would want to have, I don't want it to be a Kimberly decision, so we had kind of been talking about how can we get some input, and then knowing that FABS was working with district management group, and we were also engaged in those conversations, and then kind of, one thing just kind of led to another, that, oh, they do this process. So let's engage with them in doing it. The other thing is, I've done these types of reviews in the past with different companies in Florida, and I've read them, and actually some out of state and stuff too, and looked at them and talked with colleagues. The thing I like about what their approach is, one, like Nate said, they're working with us rather than coming in and kind of doing like a report card checkup kind of a thing. And all the ones that I've really been involved in the past were so laser focused just on special ed, it only incorporated that department, what that department was doing. It didn't branch out into the rest of the district's departments or processes or anything, and how ESC was affected with that and integrated with that. Their plan is a district-wide scope. It's not, while the highlighted part is on the special ed services, it still takes into factor that this is a district, program. It's not just one department that supports all of our students, so I like that. And there's an entrepreneurial business side, looking at resources, operations, those types of things. So it's a different kind of review than I think the other districts or any that I've ever participated in the past. I'm excited.
I just had one more thing.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Fields.
No, you can see. I just, on that same subject matter, just in contracts in general, I think the community would like to see us have some kind of process in the future, and that's for all contracts, not just yours. And concede.
I had just concerns about the guiding coalition and what that looks like, and ensuring that it's going to be representative of the entire community. I think you answered that. And then I wanted to have an understanding on the planning retreat. I think it references leadership team. Will the coalition be a part of that retreat?
Yes, typically they are.
Okay, and then my other question is, $225,000, I think, is a great investment. And I think on the sheet, it doesn't say where those dollars are coming from. I think it said Mr. Ron, our CFO, would answer that, so guys.
So initially, to get the contract, we encumber funds to get a contract put on the agenda. We initially took the funds out of fund balance. Now, I'll tell you, it's a .00000025. It doesn't really affect our fund balance. But Kimberly, Dr. Steinke and I talked, and we believe that we might have the opportunity to get federal funds to pay for this. So,
Great, so
that'll move from the local budget over to the federal.
So we'll apply for the the dollars, and then as a backup, we have the fund balance.
Yes.
We're not applying for them, we actually already know they're coming.
Oh,
I
great.
have a board item that's coming through e-agenda soon, as soon as I get it on there. Our IDA grant was recently redone by the state, and so they've allocated additional funds to all the districts. So we'll be able to use a portion of that to help pay for it.
Okay, the last question that I have, when we did this back in 2007, I believe,
Yes.
what was the cost that we spent? Anybody know that?
It's $57,000. It was from the Urban Collaborative Report.
Just curious, I know it's a lot different in depth, but I'm just wanting to know what we did back then versus now.
That.
I mean, I did a records
that was
request.
12 years ago, so
It was that plus travel, but it was considerably under what we're paying now.
But the focus was just on the ESC component, not the district-wide
Yeah.
component of it. Okay.
And
That was the
I
difference.
actually know the people that, I know them personally, the people that did that review, and it's very similar to what districts were doing
Back then.
over those years and at that time, yeah. I mean, a lot of companies do it.
Okay. Ms. Miller, then Ms. Fortney?
When you're talking about IGA, when you say that we're going to get a higher allocation, I'm sure that makes everyone surprised because we're so underfunded federally. I just would be cautious of what those funds would have gone to, I guess. And so when you can present at your next board's meeting or agenda work session. And then I want to take 2 minutes. The Urban Collaborative Report was done in 2007, so it was a while back. But some of the things that we still are currently dealing with, I just want to read through a couple of them because it's still a huge concern in the community, and I want to make sure that your report is going to address that. There was an acknowledgement that groups interviewed that principals and teachers bear the responsibility of IEP services being delivered, but there seemed to be no systemic way of determining if that was actually happening as far as delivery, and that still seems to be an issue now. The recruitment and retention of ESC teachers was also listed as one of their findings that was an issue. And then this was really important because I think you might be able to address this since you're going to look at the broad spectrum. The responsibility to ensure appropriate service delivery is not solely on the ESC department. It is a school leadership and accountability issue. And I think we've struggled with that through the years, determining whose role. And if you're looking at it from a broader perspective, you would be able to define that. There were a couple others. I'm not going to read this whole report to you.
I've read the report.
Okay, well, maybe the public is interested. The academies and other choice programs working on how inclusive they are has been an issue. The district has a legacy of operating with school principals as CEOs, and that sometimes, if we don't give them the tools to understand ESC, that has prohibited the involvement in inclusion or other programs. And this one made me chuckle because as long as I've been in this district 16 years, there needs to be a breakdown of silos within the organization that impede cooperation, collaboration, and efficient service delivery to all students, particularly those in the need of temporary and ongoing learning supports. So I hope that when you look at it from the broad spectrum that you will be able to address it. For so long, ESC has been ESC, so we've got to look at the broader picture.
And I think that, that is the fundamental difference in our approach to this work. And not to, I know the folks who did the last report, they're smart as a whip, but they looked at special ed.
Right.
Even kids with disabilities, most of them spend 80+% of their day not in special ed. And principals and classroom teachers are their primary teachers and primary leaders that are influencing them. And it is, the fact is that way too often, and I think this is a historic challenge, and it's gotten worse, not better over the last 20 years, is people think that special ed is going to do everything. They can't. It's an unrealistic expectation. We have to help you find the path to principals and classroom teachers and the entire district being supportive. And secondly, I chuckled a little bit because it was 10 years ago talking about the difficulty of recruiting and retaining teachers. We only wish the problem were as bad today as it was then. It is, 2018 is on record for being the year in which more teachers left the profession than any year ever. And special ed folks leaving at the fastest rate.
Right.
On their way out, they tell their friends, don't go into the profession. And we don't believe it is coincidental that as the challenges on kids have increased and cultures have said, hey, special ed, fix everything, that teachers are saying, I can't do that. I want to do it, but I can't do that. And unless we create a larger force to help, share the work because it's everybody's job, and restructure the work so that people feel it's more sustainable and more rewarding, then we'll come back 10 years from now and we will still be worrying about some of these issues. And this is, I want to be upbeat, this is a solvable challenge. People have done this. It's hard, I don't want to say it's easy, but it is definitely doable, but it stems from taking a systemic look and certainly from getting the buy-in across a very wide range of key stakeholders. There's no one part can fix this.
Right, thank you. Ms. Fortney?
You know, that, I really like the gen ed population piece, and I think what you're saying is to actually gather the data from the folks doing the work. My only concern with that is now we're requesting them to do more work. I don't know how exactly that piece, if it takes 5 minutes, if it takes 5 hours, if it's on top of losing their planning. You know, I would need more information on that. And then back to kind of Ms. Fields and Ms. Cunningham both kind of talked about this a little bit with the timeline. You said 5 to 6 months. So when that rolls out to the people that are doing the work, you know, is it going to be like, is this another survey that I never see the results, that I spent 2 hours doing, that kind of thing? Could you address that, please?
So again, just our goal is to build buy-in. So it is definitely a very inclusive process. We work very hard with the district leaders on the communication methods and communication messaging. Part of that will be, you know, obviously getting lots of people having the opportunity. I recognize and share that these folks already have a very full plate. Our experience is, like when we do focus groups, our biggest problem is we can't get them out of the room. People want to share.
Agreed.
The schedule sharing, we generally see somewhere between 70 and 90% of the people participating. We don't hit you over the head if you're in the 10% or so that doesn't. But people want, our experience has been, if they know the purpose of this, then they know that a core part of this is how to make the work more sustainable. They want to participate. And I think as these recommendations and opportunities are identified, I think an important part of the planning is how do you bring the information back to folks?
Yes.
How do you get their feedback, and then ultimately how do you generate their buy-in? Because this is a change process that we're embarking on, not a report we're trying to write.
Thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
Well, and I suspect part of making sure this isn't a report that just goes away is on us. I mean, we have to make sure that when this report comes out, that it's published prominently, and that we get regular monitoring of what's being done and how we're, you know, I mean, I think a large part of that's on us. And this is just an observation getting back to it. Everything you've said sounds good. I like the struggling students approach. I trust your expertise here. But you know, the lack of a competitive process for a extremely important, arguably the most important consultant work we've had done here in a long time, probably does put a little bit of a, you know, there's some pressure here. You know, and you know, that again, this all sounds very good, but I feel incumbent to note that.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item you have before you on the agenda is that we're going to hear the presentations of the charter school applicants. Melissa Brady is coming before you to introduce them. I believe they have a time limit of 5 minutes each. Am I
That's right,
correct?
I have a timer.
Okay.
You have time?
I do, I don't need your fingers.
Right, last time.
Double check your time.
Okay.
So today we have 4 applicants that would like to present you a high-level overview of their applications. The first one is, I have Mr. Mark Gotts with us, and he is representing American Classic Charter Academy.
Which one's the hot seat?
Right there.
Ready?
Sorry.
Chairman and board members, good afternoon. My name is Mark Gotts, and I am one of the organizers of the American Classical Charter Academy. As stated in our name, we are a classical education charter. I have personally observed this program in numerous charter schools throughout our country, in affluent communities and communities of high need. The program has shown positive results for those students able to obtain a seat. This program will serve all communities and populations in Polk County. Our academic design is explained in detail in the application we have submitted. To summarize, classical education is a long tradition of asking questions and digging up answers, consulting others, and asking, seeking, and finding once more. It is joining, as one writer puts it, the great conversation. That means reading great books, the classics, studying from them, mining them, talking to others about the influential ideas they contain. Whatever else classical education is, it is an ongoing series of questions and answers. I have seen this in practice at the school we are mirroring, the Mason Academy, which has been an A school since its inception over 5 years ago. The conversation is back and forth between teachers and students on an ongoing basis, starting in kindergarten. Truly an excellent education delivery system. We believe that this type of education program will enhance the choices available in Polk County. By the way, is that Imperial Polk County? Do you also use that? Imperial Polk County? No. Classical education currently exists in private and religious schools. The charter school format allows it to be presented and available to everyone without cost. After all, charter schools were created as laboratories of innovation to identify creative formats and enhance student learning. We're not seeking a program that may or may not work. We're mirroring a program that has been working in numerous charter schools throughout America. We are currently looking for property to construct our facility in the Haines City, Davenport area. This area has a lot of new home developments and an existing market that would be serviced by American Classical Charter Academy. In fact, we'll be looking at a few sites immediately after this presentation. We truly look forward to bringing this program to Polk County. Our initial communication with your charter school office has been very positive and professional. As our sponsor, we are required to interface with the district, reporting our financial and student progress on a monthly basis. Problems that we might incur will be addressed by our staff, and if needed, by the district's personnel. Together, I'm sure we can solve any potential problem. Our governance structure is that of a not-for-profit corporation. Our 501c3 filing is started once our application has been approved. Our founding board members are all business professionals in technology, real estate, and aviation. Yes, we even have a pilot on board. Our financial structure is focused on accountability at many levels. We are the stewards of public funds, and our policies and procedures that you will review in our application are those that have been formed over 15 years of operations in the charter school industry. We look forward to working with Melissa Brady and her staff as our application proceeds. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present American Classical Charter Academy to you today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Under 5?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gotts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have representatives from Bridge Prep Academy. Mr. J.C. Quintano is here.
Good afternoon, Liz. Get this set up a second up here. Madam Superintendent, school board members,
Okay,
J.C.
and then-
Buchanan, we represent Bridgeport Academy, a statewide charter operator in the state of Florida. 5 minutes is a very quick and brief period of time in order to go over a lot and a 10-year organization that has been in existence. So I'll get right down to the areas that you want for us to share with you. Bridgeport Academies are typically K programs. There are high schools. The one that we have submitted for your district is a K model. It is an open enrollment charter program. It doesn't have an interview process. It doesn't have a pre-selection process. It is open to all and usually mirrors a direct relation to the community that it serves. We're in 8 different districts currently, servicing over 7,000 students in 16 different districts, and all our campuses are diverse and look different, and that's because our model works for all. We specialize and have extensive experience in working with children that are ELL, that come as English as a second language, and we also have extensive experience with students with disability, and not only with that, but the state training of our state team, not only training the students with disability teachers, but also the administrative staff and those who support general ed with potential students that could be leading into those programs. Our academic design offers a curriculum we try to align to the district comprehensive reading plan. As we know, students are public school students, even though they attend charter schools, and we don't like to be for there to be a disconnect with the core subjects when they come to our charter, because our I guess creative model, it has to do with an extended day second language model. So we try to stick to that as best as possible. We also focus on all levels of instruction, whether high, low, medium, and we also then offer our extended language model to native and non-native speakers. So where you would traditionally in a dual language model have to have a understanding of the language, our model could work for a child coming into us in 6th grade, never spoken English or Spanish, or coming from a third language. It doesn't discriminate based on your history. In fact, we have schools that are 95% Title I. In black communities, we have schools that are predominantly American, white, and then most of our schools are predominantly equally balanced throughout the entire state. Our model has an extended hour of instruction, so that extended hour of the Spanish language does not interfere with any of the core subjects or our state standards that we have to comply with in order to make sure that the children are being competitive with the common core subjects. We're very heavy when we establish our schools in technology. It is the future. It is basically how we instruct today. We invest extensively in our budget, if you have had the chance to review that, in technology and instructional softwares that's a little bit more of a direct instruction and differentiates the instruction for our students. We also, almost every single school mirrors a direct demographic of the community it services. So it is not selective in any way, shape, or form. It is open to all children. These are the demographics that are currently throughout Polk County based on the census, and that's what our projections are expected to be. In addition to expecting about a 12% population of students with disabilities and about a 10% population of students with English as a second language. This is currently Bridge Prep's area in the state of Florida. Green are the schools that we currently, and districts that we currently operate. As I mentioned, 8 different districts currently. You can see South, Central, North Florida. With the 2 yellow areas, new districts we're proposing to add. As you can see, Polk County is in the center of our what we call our Florida belt, and it'll merge together the programs that we currently have in operation in adjacent districts to you. In fact, in some of our districts in Osceola and Riverview and so forth, we service kids from Osceola that come from Polk County. And in fact, we have members from our team, our principal from our Riverview campus, which Miss Melissa Brady had the pleasure, we invited her to come and visit, is a resident of Polk County, was a teacher in Polk County, was a coach in Polk County, and still resides in Polk County, and is currently working in our Riverview campus. So we've taken the time to root ourselves and try to now become a Central Florida service. We have about over 2,500 students that we currently service in the Central Florida area. Our district relationship, if you all recall, I believe we had a representative from Governmental Affairs from our Alliance, Florida Charter School Alliance, Ralph Alger, and former state representative visit with each and every single one of you. One member, I believe, that we're not able to meet with and share our model, and we even asked and answered some of the questions that you all had on a timely manner. So we're taking the time to meet with you all and look into what your needs are. And our government structure, as you can see, it's pretty well-rounded. Some of the members have been around since 2009. It's diverse in nature, and we do have one opening pending the approval of the Polk County approval for a local to be added to the team. And we're a district accredited firm, so all our schools receive accreditation because the managing firm is a district accredited firm. If you have any questions?
Mr. Quinton, I have just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When I met with Mr. Arza, he indicated that y'all would be open to building in the northeast part of the county?
So initially, we're a large firm, most of our schools are new construction. We manage over a $50 million budget in the state funding, so we're extremely experienced in the financial environment and are audited in 16 different campuses right now. So we have a portfolio of about 5 potential properties that, and he did share from most of you, ESC was a big concern, and location. We do have prospect areas in the growing areas that some of you mentioned, and I believe it might have been you in the Davenport area. There's a huge tract homes coming up. One of you might have mentioned that, and we do have one actually within that area that doesn't directly impact any of your existing public schools, where we feel that our model would be a great success. So we do have some properties that have been committed to on due diligence pending approval. But absolutely, we will be willing to work with you and where we place our school.
We appreciate that, and I can't speak for the other board members, but just speaking for myself, I would be much more open to this charter application if it were in the northeast part of the county where we desperately need some help.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and I echo the same sentiment, and when Mr. Arza and I spoke for several reasons, and let me just share that with you. Number one is with your emphasis on the dual language program. Most of our schools on the east side of the county are majority schools, quite frankly, and very heavily Hispanic, usually at least 1/3 or greater, depending on where you situate. Furthermore, with the recent hurricane that we had in Puerto Rico, and with a lot of residents coming and moving here, large population, and the blessing is, yes, we have hired too, and they've worked out so wonderful, and the children are going to school, so I would consider that population would continue to grow as well. So, and additionally, because of us being a bedroom community in the Northeast for Disney and Orlando,
Absolutely.
I mean, just take a drive.
We're in
It's
Orange
going to
County,
continue
we're
to
in
grow.
Orlando, we're in
Exactly,
Osceola,
exactly.
we're in- yeah,
So,
we're
you know,
yeah.
I concur and told Mr. Arza I would love to see this school moved from Lakeland, if you will, to
Right.
Northeast
And
Polk.
Lakeland was just a parcel that we have 4 parcels right now that we
That you're
have-
looking at.
Yeah, that we have actually the land developers and our investors have already held, pending, and that's more conversations that we'll
Okay.
go ahead and have once our approval comes in, but we're definitely
I
more
think
than
it's
open.
important.
We took the time to talk to Mr. Arden, we said this,
Yes.
and we came here several years ago,
You
about
did.
3 years ago. We were predominantly a South Florida corporation, and within that time, it's kind of been like an organic growth, and that's why I showed you the map. We invested in being able to grow our model, and contrary to your belief, our model is mostly sought out by non-Hispanics. It's sought out by those who do not speak
Sure, sure.
the language, so the
Sure.
majority of our service is provided to children that do not speak
They
Spanish.
don't.
And we've had extensive successes because our software and our curriculum tailors to all.
Yeah.
True.
And you don't have to start with us in kindergarten like most dual language models might require.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a really tight schedule.
Absolutely,
Mr. Brown.
absolutely.
Thank you
But,
for
Thank
it.
you very
for your
much.
questions and for your time.
And I commend you for putting a board member from Polk County on
Yeah.
this board, because at the time you originally came, that was not an option,
We
and
did not.
today
Have
it is,
adjacent
and it's
county board
very
members in
important.
Hillsborough as well, currently 2 of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for your time.
Next, we have a representative, Kelly De La Cruz, and she is representing the Escuela Montessori. Is this- Yes.
Hello, my name's Kelly De La Cruz, and I'm going to try and go as fast as I can. I haven't been able to get it under 5 minutes yet. You all know Polk County is growing in its Hispanic population. From 2005 to 2017, we have more than doubled, compared with the state, which has only gone about 30% of an increase in their Hispanic population. That doesn't even count what happened last year with the hurricane, or the incoming families from Venezuela and Honduras who are coming because of political turmoil. compared with other states, with other counties in the state, we rank 15th highest in our English language learner population. And of our English language learner population, almost 90% of them are Spanish-speaking students. Students who are English language learners have a distinct disadvantage when they come into school. They tend to have a higher high school dropout rate. They also do not perform as highly as other students, and that increases the achievement gap increases. So these are numbers from EdStat, which show that our third graders who passed FSA, who were English language learners, there were 26% of them, but by the time we got to 6th grade, almost 7% passed FSA. And partially this has to do with the fact that when you're learning a new language, you're learning interpersonal communication, you're not learning academic knowledge. And so once you hit 4th, 5th, 6th grade, all of a sudden you're expected to have this background knowledge, and a lot of times these students haven't had the opportunity to develop those. In 2011, Collier and Thomas released an 18-year longitudinal study which showed that dual language immersion, two-way dual language immersion had the power of substantially decreasing that achievement gap. Our mission is to provide a two-way dual language immersion Montessori program to students from preschool through 6th grade, and our goal is that the students in the program will become bilingual and biliterate in both English and Spanish. The program model is substantially more Spanish than I guess you might typically think, although I believe that Polk County School Board had 10 dual language programs for many years, and they were very high performing, and the students in those programs surpassed their peers, both the English-speaking students and the Spanish-speaking students. The ideal structure for the school would be at least 50% of our students come in as English language learners. Obviously, it's going to depend who applies, and we have been working a lot to share about our school in the community. 90% of instruction would be in Spanish in kindergarten, and then in subsequent years it would be 50-50. Skip that. Dual language programs are actually growing quite a bit in the country. In 2011, it had gone up to 2,000, and I'm fairly sure that number has grown. Montessori also has a very good reputation. Polk County is pretty phenomenal, and I'm really proud of Polk County for having so many public Montessori options for our students. However, there's still a very big need every year. Every one of those schools turns away at least 300 students. Lakeland Montessori has 2,000 students on their wait list. Last year, Cypress Junction turned away 600 students. The majority of them are coming in at kindergarten or applying at those earlier years. I'm going to skip what Montessori is because I think hopefully maybe people know, but we're sort of picking this little triangle. Originally, I had hyper-focused on Medela as the area that I really wanted to go into, but Mulberry has reached out to me, and I've spoken quite a bit with Mulberry City planners, and recently Bartow has also pointed out to me that Bartow would pull from Mulberry, it would pull from Eloise, Fort Meade, Juanita, Highland City, and so we're trying to locate ourselves in an area that has a high population of English language learner students, that is diverse, and try as much as possible to pull from the area that we're in. We've reached out to ESC and ESOL, Transportation School Safety. Thank you. This is where I always ended in my practice as well.
Okay. I have a question. Yes, please. It's a general question, not just for her. On the needs assessment, and maybe you can answer that, Ms. Melissa, do they actually do an assessment by polling the community to see if they would have an interest in their schools, or is it just basically, they do some behind the scene analysis and determine their own site, their own location?
That's a good
Are you
question. It
understanding?
really depends. It varies. We have some applicants who have been very researched and very specific and strategic in where they want to put their school. And then we've had others who are more general and high level about their research when it comes to the needs assessment, but it's really across the board.
So when we get the information from you, we'll have that information to look at?
The needs assessment should be attached to your notes.
I mean, as far as the
Oh,
detail?
absolutely. Yes,
That's what
ma'am.
I'm saying,
Yes.
it's detailed, yeah, I read the needs assessment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Cruz.
Lastly, but most certainly not least, we have Navigator Academy here, represented by Melissa Aguilar and Ivan Hernandez. That name probably sounds familiar to you. We are opening a Navigator Academy in August of 2019. This is their second application to the district.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Aguilar, and I'm joined with Ivan Hernandez, and we're representing Navigator Academy of Leadership. Navigator Academy of Leadership began with research as to what is it that is needed. And the research showed that CEOs, employers, supervisors, business owners all claim that what's lacking in their employees is the ability to problem solve, think critically, collaborate, effectively communicate and listen, and really be able to leverage each other's talents. So therefore, where is education sometimes missing the mark? We believe that students are not necessarily given frequent and meaningful opportunities to truly apply these life work skills. Research also shows that we are educating students for jobs that have yet to be created using technology that has yet to be invented. So let's stop and reflect on that. We are educating children for jobs that have yet to be created using technology that we have not even imagined. So are we really truly preparing our children for a successful future? In this digital age where information is readily accessible to our students, education must adapt to the needs of the students as well as the times. So we must make sure that we are teaching our kids to read, synthesize, analyze, and apply information, have them be problem solvers and critical thinkers while still developing good people skills. Navigator Academy of Leadership will offer something unique where every child will be aspiring to be great. Think of it as education with old school values with a modern twist. Our well-rounded educational program begins with our SMART curriculum. Our SMART curriculum is relevant instruction in science, math, art, reading in the form of literature, and technology through an exploratory lab model that will have our students be active listeners, participants, and thinkers. Our goal is for our students to be the CEOs of their own learning. Our program will also incorporate the Leader in Me. The Leader in Me is much more than just a character education program. It will be the culture of Navigator Academy of Leadership. It is based off of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and has revolutionized Fortune 500 companies. Our students through the Leader in Me will maintain leadership binders where they will develop mission statements, reflect on their strengths and weaknesses, they will incorporate their goals, track their progress, host student-led parent conferences, and celebrate goals that are met. Our overall program will assist in making sure that every single child finds their inner gift, because we truly believe that their I will is more important than their IQ. We're also very excited that what we are bringing to Polk County is our collaboration and our partnership with NASA. Teachers will be trained at Kennedy Space Center by NASA educational specialists to incorporate our hands-on exploratory model across the curriculum, which will reinforce our SMART program. We will be assigned 3 NASA engineers that will work with our teachers and our students both in person and through video conferencing, and students will be gathering data for NASA regarding plant growth in space. You'll also see here our projected enrollment numbers. We are targeting Davenport. We are already in Davenport. We have had a wonderful, wonderful relationship with the city of Davenport. We have the support of the city manager, the mayor, the commissioners, as well as the chief of police. We are currently opening up a school. We are assisting with the overcrowding of schools. And we know that they have asked actually for us to consider this new application. We are also working with the Charter School Investment Company. Our goal is for us to be able to finance, build, and develop our own school so that the school can be owned by the Navigator Board. From our experience, it takes at least 2 years, so we are projecting an August 2021 opening. You'll see by the information that we are expecting to mirror the population that is in the Davenport North area, with a largely Hispanic population. Those are the schools in the vicinity, and their enrollment is, actually that's the 2016-2017. It is extremely different now than it is reflected in the FLDOE report, by the way. Our district collaboration, it has been a pleasure to work with Melissa Brady in her office the last 3 years. We have visited multiple charter schools throughout the state, and especially in Polk County. It has been a wonderful relationship. We have been nothing but honest, transparent in working with the district, and we expect and continue to do so as we open up, including transparency in our operation, budget, and finance. And I think one of the things that I want to echo is how closely we've been working with the city of Davenport. We have been very active members in the Davenport community, and it's actually been probably one of the best experiences.
Thank you much. So you
Does
have
anybody
those.
have any questions for Melissa to answer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady, and thank you to all the participants for presenting their proposals to the board at this time. Next week you have before you, which is the McLaughlin Academy's proposal plan that's coming for you, and I believe Dr. Akes is bringing a team.
When I get started, what are you asking from us out of this today? Like,
So what, the plan, what they're doing is they're gonna look to move forward, and you're gonna hear that as they go through. What they're actually what they're presenting today is based on some information that staff had proposed. Not just recently, but it was proposed once before and never brought forward, the staff's proposing. We're looking to move forward, once we let you see what's in the plan for the academies. The first year you're gonna hear about is a planning year to continue to move forward in this direction with this plan for McLaughlin, and that's what we're looking for today, for the continuation of moving forward with this plan, with the staff. And the next step will be to have the staff to do more input on this.
I mean, are you asking for us to give you the go-ahead to continue forward, or is this just gonna continue forward? I mean, is this informational, or are you asking for direction?
Well, listening to the staff, Mr. Townsend, this is what they really want to move forward on this. If the board would like to weigh in on it, we would like to hear your information about it today. But this is one of the things that they wanted to look for their community and their children, which is right there. And I think you're gonna hear, because a couple of your questions was regarding transportation and the different things of what's gonna happen with those children in that community. So they're also looking to what can they do for their school as well. And this is one of their proposals that's coming forward. So yes, we're looking to move forward, and if the board would like to weigh in on it, we're very welcome to hear that. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question of order.
Sure.
With this being what we just talked about earlier this morning, if we need to, we have 20 minutes allotted to this. If this is going to go beyond that, can we move to continue this discussion?
Yeah, I mean.
Without giving an official head nod or whatever we were supposed to.
Actually, with all due respect to the superintendent and her staff, as I look over this, there are gonna be significant dollars associated with this, so I don't imagine us
We're not making
making any decision today.
So not even, but we're being asked if we agree for them to move forward, but I learned my lesson once. I do not want to agree to move until we have all the information.
So can I address this?
Sure,
one?
absolutely.
So what we're looking to do is, can they continue the work, working with the staff, working with the school, keeping it going forward and fleshing it out? Like Chair said, there is a lot of, money tied to it. It will have to come before the board as a vote.
Right.
Is what it will have to do.
But would they need our consensus to do some more investigative work? That's the question
You're
I'm
saying
having.
moving forward with delving into the process of
Right.
everything.
Would they need that if that's all they're gonna do?
No, they wouldn't need that, but it's, if you want to give input today and,
Okay.
and relay some information back to staff, that is what they're here today.
So I understand today is for information, but we are not agreeing to any
No.
of this.
No,
Today.
the day is, that
Okay.
presented to you is information.
I would suggest that we hear what staff has to say, and then we should have that discussion, I think.
Mhm.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about what we have on the table today and really what the ask is. So today what we're bringing before you is really looking to approval in the concept of trying to look at McLaughlin and what we can do to address some of the needs that we have with the school and with the community as a whole. When you're looking at McLaughlin, one of the things that we wanted to do is, and we're charged with, is look at the barriers that exist at McLaughlin and what are the ways that we can do to work together as a district to address some of the barriers that we know exist when students are coming from a struggling situation and a school is struggling. So what the superintendent has charged the district staff with doing is actually sitting down and as a group, the group that's before you, and work together to devise a structure that would address some of these systemic needs and then come back to y'all with a plan later on in this spring. So really, what is this about? Well, when we're talking about McLaughlin and the vision that we would recommend for that school is really wall-to-wall academies. Why would we do wall-to-wall academies? We know that research tells us that regardless of where a student is coming from, when students are engaged in academies, their attendance is better, their academics is better, they see the relevance of education because those academies tie right together with their academic courses. So we would be looking to create academies around the rigorous college and career preparatory areas, both within the Polytech area and within the fine arts area. I think that whenever we're looking at that, we know that when students are engaged in those small learning communities, they stay engaged with school.
When you look at McLaughlin today, this is what you see. You drive up and you see this beautiful building and you see some wonderful facilities. Current enrollment of about 650 students, 80% or probably a little more than that are fully engaged in the fine arts in the school. Because in 2006, we started looking at McLaughlin as a fine arts academy. In 2007, it fully opened with 9 fully equipped fine arts spaces and 9 highly qualified fine arts teachers. They have a black box theater there. We have a cafetorium that has special lighting and sound, as well as versatile seating in there. We have an art gallery, which is just a stunning showplace there. And as you can see up in the left-hand corner, in the years 2011 to 14, they were an Arts Achieve model school, and they are currently a Florida Arts Model School as recognized by the Florida Department of Education and the Florida Alliance for Arts Education. They also have a robust agriculture component to their electives at McLaughlin as part of their programs of choice.
So what would it look like when the school would be in full swing? In other words, what is that vision when you're looking on down through the road in 4 or 5 years when McLaughlin is really rocking and rolling with their academies in place? It would have a full range of advanced placement and dual enrollment options. We would have an expectation that all the students that are in these academies would be pursuing industry certifications. Again, because of not just McLaughlin being a smaller high school then, but because of these small learning communities, it gives the students the individual attention that really helps students to be engaged and stay engaged in school. The students would have those success pathways. In other words, when they start in 6th grade, they actually start looking on down the road for what does it mean for post-high school for me and where am I going. I tell you the other thing that I really like about the way we would approach this deal is that students really, when they enter 6th grade, they have a voice and choice in what they're going to be. In other words, what is your interest, and then what would you want to be based on those interests post-high school? Maybe it is the arts, maybe it is one of these CTE areas, but I think that that really is important for students to see a vision of where they're going. I think one of the things that we know right now for our students and for our staff is that I really believe that when talking to students, talking to staff, they're not sure what that 9th grade step is for them. They're not sure what that post-high school step for them. So you take a school that's already struggling in a situation where students are not sure of those next steps, that 6-12 continuum really helps them to see that piece. So when we're looking at the efficient utilization of the school and what the facility is actually set up for, currently we have 650 students, as Ms. Cummings talked about. The fish capacity for that school is 1,320. So when we're looking at that 90% utilization, you could have about 1,188 students at that school. And if we grew those cohorts out, we would literally be at about 1,100, 1,050. So we're at really that, if you will, that sweet spot within the utilization of the school by growing it out the way we're talking about. I think that when we get into this planning year and start meeting with staff there at the school, we're going to have to talk about, well, where would the middle school students be? Where would the high school students be? I know for a middle school parent, a 6th grade parent, they would have those concerns, and we would need to make sure that we're addressing those. The other thing that we really need to take into account is that, Lake Wales is renowned for the fine arts, and I think this really complements their community. And I think as we're looking at, as the school begins to mature, as the school and the student body matures, we would be working with that school and with that student body to say what programs make sense at your school. And I think that's the key piece that helps to make that school a success is that we'd be able to take a 6th grade student and the 7th grade students that are there right now, start doing surveys for them for what they really are interested in, and then start to design those 9th, 10th, and 11th grade academies around the needs and the wants of those students. Also keeping in mind that we want to make sure they match up with the high-wage, high-demand jobs. The rationale. I got to tell you, when we're looking across the district and we're addressing the needs with this McLaughlin Fine Arts Academy and Polytech Academy, really it's about reducing the opportunity gap. I got to ask you, do you really think that the students that go to McLaughlin have the same access as the students that go to Lakeland? Do you think that the students that go to McLaughlin have the same access and opportunity as the students that go to Bartow? And I think if you put yourself in that particular student's seat in McLaughlin, I think you can see that we really need to be able to reduce that opportunity gap. And that's really what this does. A student that lives across the street from McLaughlin, them going to Harrison is not an option for them. It's not an option because realistically, geographically, they can't be, that doesn't enter into a mom's ability for them to be able to get them back and forth, even if transportation is provided. So I think when we're looking at this, I think it's about thinking about that student that really comes from that community and asking ourselves realistically, have we provided the same opportunity for that student as we have for other students? Transportation. Right now, we're transporting some 470 students out of Lake Wales into high schools in different areas within our school district. That's costing us right at $1.1 million. So we got that savings right off the bat if we're able to reduce that, attracting those students back into our schools there within the Lake Wales area. The last one I'm really excited about. The last bullet point there really is about vertically aligning the upper elementary programs with Spook Hill and with McLaughlin. So you can imagine that a student that as Spook Hill, when we look at what offerings we have for that student, again, we got to ask ourselves, do the students at Spook Hill have that same opportunity as some of our other students that are in our more populated areas? And I think when we vertically align Spook Hill with McLaughlin, then again, the students see the relevance of education within that area down there. I've asked Ms. Cummings in that next slide to actually talk about that piece as we're going forward. The team that we put together to look at that, the Office of Acceleration, of course Ms. Cummings and Mr. Cochran here with Multiple Pathways. But one of the things you got to realize is this is a concept that we're put together for you. There are a lot of next steps that would need to be taken. Once the board says, yeah, I think we can go with this concept, can you give us some more information, can you further develop it? We would really need to take it down to the stakeholders at McLaughlin, to the stakeholders at Spook Hill, to that area, and talk to them about, well, what programs do you see would be really beneficial to the students here? So really today, when we're talking about the team that put this together, we're talking about the superintendent asking us, can this be done? We bring it to you and say, absolutely, we can do this, and it would be very beneficial to the students. But keep in mind, there's a lot of step and work left to be done in this.
Currently, what we have at McLaughlin, as I mentioned before, is a robust fine arts department, excuse me, as well as a very fine agricultural department. What we're doing is building the foundation for high school courses at the middle school level. To give you just a taste of some of the courses that we have in fine arts, we have a chorus band, chorus orchestra. We also have a guitar teacher who teaches classical guitar, not just class guitar. There is a difference. But then across the hall is our Rock and Roll Academy, which is a whole different genre there. We also have keyboarding and music tech, which focuses on students' own composition. We also have 2D, 3D, and digital arts in our visual arts department. We have theater and musical theater, and we also have ballet, modern, and jazz dance. Again, we're just building upon the foundation, so when we get to the high school level, we can take a deep dive into that rigor.
So right now in the areas of CT, we have a strong agricultural program and we have a few business classes. We selected these courses not only for their high skill, high wage, high demand necessity, but because we feel like they can connect with the arts. You can see some of the possible shared courses in our Venn diagram.
This gives you a little deeper dive into the possibilities once you get to high schools. We're looking at expanding, but building on student interest, as my colleagues have talked about here. So it's not just us building something and saying, y'all come. We want to build what they are interested in so that we start facilitating what their career looks like after high school.
Some of the projected CTE certifications that could be earned under these courses are animal science services, allied health to include EKG and CNA, applied robotics, digital design, Adobe, digital video production, and drafting. The Digital Commons is a proposal that is like a fabrication lab, but more. It's a place where science meets career and technical meets the arts. We envision a space that is equipped with all types of technical equipment that promotes creativity and can be used in the creation of arts, architecture, robotics, manufacturing, and engineering. Specifically, we'll purchase 3D laser printers, laser cutters, CNC routers, plasma cutters, screening printers, and various tools of technical and artisan trades. This will be a space that not only brings together the students of different disciplines, but the community as well. Just as we've done at Rochelle School of the Arts, we will allow controlled community access, which will promote priceless connections with parents, business, and the local community at large.
Well, just to sort of build on that community involvement, and this really goes back to conversations that we had with the teachers and the staff. And when we went out there and asked the teachers, first of all, where are you on this? You know, are you supporting? What pieces do you want included? One of the things we heard over and over again, and they gave us input in lots of areas, we added the computer coding piece because we had teachers, we couldn't even get out of the building. We had teachers who were stopping us going, oh, you didn't put coding in, or we really need an emphasis on robotics. But one of the other things we heard from the teachers who work with these kids every day is they really need to build those communications and those connections with the community. And so one of the things we'll do is do like monthly colloquias where they have various presentations around skills and industry certifications and people who are actually in that business. And so It's the teacher as learner, because the teacher's sitting in on that, learning as well, thinking, oh, this is a great classroom connection to make. But it's also bringing the community into the school. And then we want to talk about internships. One of the things that we know will be a big piece of this is teacher planning time in PD, because teachers don't need one more thing on their plates. And so, for example, if we do middle school internships once a semester, those mentors that we've built, those people in the community who are supporting this can work with our middle school students to do those internships. And while the school students are at internships, the teachers have that planning day. And it's not just a one and done, go out and do an internship, great, check that off the list. It's part of their whole learning process. It's part of how do I make decisions about what might be a potential career for me? How do I make those kinds of decisions about post-secondary options? Sometimes I think we wait too long. I think ninth grade is way too late. And the joy of doing a 6-12 is kids are starting to think and make those decisions. I worked with a school that we had the typical 7th grade girls, they want to be veterinarians, right? That's all they want to do. So they go spend the day at the vet and they're cleaning mange off dogs. And they come home and they see me in the hallway. They come to school the next morning and they go, oh, we are never doing that again. Okay, what a valuable learning experience, right? It's not all pet the puppies kind of a day. It's you have to roll your sleeves up and do some things that you may not really enjoy. So building that into the school day really makes it rewarding and a real life experience. And then when I talked with the school and some of the teachers about mentorships, we talked to Ms. Drisdom, and they've got a mentorship program, but they really want to build it. They really want to take that to the next level as well. And one of the ways we can do that is success pathway planning. Again, 6 through 12, the advantage you have there is that students in 6th grade are starting to think about what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what is it I really like to do. And so this isn't the idea of create a program, drop one more thing on teachers to do. It's we're already collecting student data. We're already working with students to say, is this your best work? Is this a portfolio-worthy piece? And this just is a place to house it. And then when it comes time to apply for jobs, to apply for colleges, they've got an entire portfolio. But we're not going to come to you today and say, oh, this is what it looks like. We want the teachers to come back and tell us, here's what works. Here's what we need. Here's the data we know, because we want students to own their data. You know, we don't want teachers to be the hardest working person in the classroom. We want students to say, I own this. This is the piece I'm most proud of. This is the data that I know I have to work on. And so that's sort of a piece of that. And then we'd also want to involve parents in post-secondary planning courses. March of your senior year is not the time for a parent to go, wow, what are they going to do next? We really want that to be a part of the process all along. And that's helping our parents learn, just like it is helping our students learn. Next thing I want to talk about real briefly is curricular approaches. You're going to get tired of me saying this, but I'm going to say it again. We have broad strokes. When I was talking with Donna yesterday, I said, it's sort of like a circle. We want to make sure the circle's correct based on the input your teachers and the administrative team has said to us. You know, we want this circle of Academy's model, core subject areas, all of those pieces. But we really want you to fill in that piece. So we really want the principal during the planning year to work with the school leadership team, the faculty, and the community to tailor a curriculum program that really sends the school in the direction that the community and the school and the students want to go. So we want to talk about cross-curricular. The Academy's model means not just you go to your academy and then I go to my regular math class. We want it to be cross-curricular and embedded in those core subject areas. We took a look at High Tech High and took some of their key elements from that, essential design principles like equity and the collaborative design piece and personalization and those pieces. And then when we talk about arts integration, we look at like Kennedy Center Arts Edge. And when we were talking to Donna yesterday, her first question is, okay, I've just bought these $65 a piece, textbooks on art. How does this fit? You know, let's delve a little deeper. And we were able to say, absolute match. Wouldn't have suggested it without being an absolute match. So we're very cognizant of what's already working so well there, and we're just trying to build on that. And the next two slides really talk about, in more detail, about that curriculum framework, about programming that meets the unique needs of each child, making sure every child, if they're differently abled, they're still going to fully participate in these programs. How do we create personalization for students that focuses not just on academic skills, but learning beyond those academic skills? How do we teach students what authentic work is? How do we help them be successful post-secondary? How do we create meaningful experiences for them? And then we really want the collaborative design between teachers and students to be a reflective process. I mentioned this earlier. I don't want the teacher to be the hardest working person in the room. I want those students to take ownership of their own learning. I want those students to say, this is my life and my work, and this is what I'm proud of.
McLaughlin's current ESE population is 14%, which is consistent with the district average. Both Ms. Cummings and I realize that arts and CTE education is often one of the first places that differently abled students find success in school. So we plan on making an emphasis of that. All programs will be inclusive of ESE students. Additionally, some CTE programs may be able to offer modified occupational completion points, which will allow students that are differently able to excel in their CTE area.
We've already addressed the fact that the arts are for all students. And at McLaughlin, we're very proud of a particular dance class that we have. It's for students of mixed mobilities. And so anytime y'all want to go, it will be a good time had by all right there. But if we get them up on stage, you see them just like every other kid that's a part of the dance concert. And it'll make you cry every time. But it's because we're addressing the needs of those particular students. Also, as another part of our district initiative, we are looking at a curriculum for theater students where the model is you have a collaborative work with students of all abilities that are working together to put together a theater production. So we're just looking at some special things there to make sure that all of our students have the opportunities to excel in the arts.
Again, the emphasis on parent involvement, and we all know that's challenging at middle and high school, but that when it's student-led, whether it's student-led conferences or student-led training, you get a much better attendance and engagement from parents. And so we see student-led conferences as being a part of this. We also see as students become really strong in the digital commons areas, they're going to be the instructors. They're going to instruct the community. They're going to instruct their parents. And what a wonderful opportunity for parents to come in and learn from their students. I don't know about you, but when my phone needs programming, I call my daughter. You know, if it starts getting complicated. When these students are proficient on laser cutters, they're designing the sets. I use the example of Rochelle School of the Arts. If you had a chance to see their Narnia production, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the wardrobe that was sort of the center of that was created in their digital fab lab. They built it. You can buy that from a company that builds the set. I would say ours was as good or better than anything that they could have purchased. So it's really exciting to see that kind of work. I'll also share an example from a 5th grade classroom where we had the kids actually teaching an after-school class where they were teaching Word and Excel and PowerPoint. We had a mom who attended that. She didn't have that skill set. At the end of the 9-week course, she applied for a secretarial job and got her first full-time job she'd ever had in her life. So those are the kinds of things that we really want to see happen.
One of the questions that would come to my mind if I was sitting in your shoes and also a student or a parent would be what would be the continuum that we would offer in extracurricular programming And our recommendation would be, just like the programs that we're looking at, is that we allow the students to really be telling us what they're interested in. We don't see that there being a limit on, for example, if you wanted to have football by the time the school evolved to have the 6-12 continuum, there would be no reason why they couldn't. But again, the question is, what are the students really interested in and the community interested in, unless we would allow that to evolve as the school evolved with the extracurricular. The actual enrollment, I think this is a unique piece for McLaughlin, is that the students in 6th, 7th, and 8th, when they got to 8th grade, they would literally roll up into the high school. They would make a choice in 8th grade for us, the 9th grade academy that they would be interested in. If they had already been in an academy such as the one that kind of the scenario that Ms. Bridges described, that maybe they weren't interested anymore, or found out that they really had something else that they were more interested in, they could always change. But I'm excited about the fact that we could vertically align that, and then the students would be able to make that change. Again, we mentioned a little bit about Spook Hill. I think this really would be a great benefit to the students in that elementary age for Spook Hill. When we look at that 4th and 5th grade offering, being able to vertically align that piece, it just really gets all of the kids involved in that thinking long-term post-high school. And I think that it would really be that lift that Spook Hill could also utilize from. What we'd have to do, though, upon approval of the concept to move forward, is we would have to literally go to Lake Wales and meet with both the Spook Hill leadership team and the McLaughlin leadership team, and have them actually working together on what makes sense and what the students would be interested in as far as the vertical alignment.
Some of this part is not a new idea. Several years ago, we looked at doing that vertical alignment specifically with Spook Hill. We took our teachers from McLaughlin, our arts teachers, and we would have a dance month and a theater month and a music month, and they went down to the schools, and to the elementary school, and they did a before or after school specific program for those students. We would look at doing that again if the school would find that to be helpful. Another thing we wanted to look at, especially in 4th and 5th grade, we know that those become challenging years for some of our students. So throughout the district right now, we're looking at a different way to look at their offerings in the special areas, we like to call them in elementary, and maybe they choose a mini major, so that they would be able to focus on a particular area of the arts, or perhaps something in the STEAM realm, and they could that would go into their electives. We started looking at that at Code Academy. We are looking at something like that perhaps at Blake Academy. We're looking at, so it's expanding that kind of concept to give our students at 4th and 5th grade some additional choices.
Funding. I know that this question is always going to come up. I appreciate Mr. Wilson's due diligence on it. You know, I think one of the things we need to realize is right now we got a building down there that has the capacity to handle this. We wouldn't be asking for additional student seats. It would actually make the district more efficient, and we would reduce that out of Lake Wales transportation cost. We already have the gym facility on the 5-year plan. That's already on there and has been approved by y'all, so it would be, as the school continues to evolve, we would go ahead and put that gym in. The fine arts facility is already in place. We know that we would be looking at adding some of the more technical CTE programs. That's not local funds. That is actually Perkins grant funded and CAPE funded. So there would be no local funds asked for in that area. And really the FTE funding as it grows pays for the additional teachers that we would be adding there. So when we're looking at it, really the cost that you're looking at out of local funds, there would not be any far as when we get this thing rolling and moving forward within both the arts area and the CTE area. What we would be looking at on down the road is what does the school board want this school to become, and what does the community believe that as these programs evolve, maybe it is something that we need to look at to help address some of the full gamut of the athletics or extracurricular, but that's not on the upfront cost, and that's really as the school evolves we would be able to look at that. So without any commitment of local funds, without this dipping into anything with the fund balance or anything like that, we'd be able to get this done. We'd be able to fund the programs out of Perkins or CAPE funds. And this is not dependent on getting any kind of other grants as we move forward.
However, you could not have me up here without at least talking about grant funds a little bit, right? So I want to clarify two things, just to echo what Dr. Ake said. This is not a grant initiative or requires grant funding. However, if we can get some grant funding, we can really support the professional development, those pieces that, whether it's visiting sites, whether teachers need extra supplies or support, so that we can do those pieces. The other thing I want to really clarify is, because sometimes you see me in the magnet and choice role, this is not a magnet school. It's not a choice school. This is a way to take an existing zone school, make it stronger, expand its grade level offerings, and look for ways that we can build partnerships in the community, within that school community, but also to build some grant offerings through USDOE. We're doing some work with the Gates Foundation. There's lots of grants coming out there. As some of you might be aware, the government was shut down for a little while. Now that they've reopened, they're spitting those grants out 2 or 3 a week. So we're looking for what's a good match for the school and what supports the concepts that the teachers and the administrators have shared with us that they really want to move forward with. And so, if I come to you a month from now and go, okay, here's that proposal I talked about, know that it's within the confines of what the vision emerging from the school and coming from this presentation.
So this would be the overall timeline that we've been looking at. Really the conclusion, as we wind down the 18-19 school year, we would be meeting with leadership a lot. Next year would be what we would consider a planning year for the 19-20 school year. So there would be no changes as far as the grade groupings. And then we would have our first 9th grade class in 2021. I think that that's really important. The next 18 months is probably the most important for this school, being able to meet with stakeholders, being able to actually sit down and look at what is model schools. Some of them have been mentioned, taking staff to that, doing PD with staff on what is the academy concept, and being very understanding that we're asking for students and staff to really commit to a new way of teaching and learning as we go forward, a teaching and learning environment that engages students. And I think, as Ms. Bridges said, where the students do most of the work and not the teachers. I think that as we move forward and we're looking at it, this is the slide that makes the most sense to me. This is your 7th grade group at McLaughlin. And you got to ask yourself, do you think those students have the same opportunity as the students that go to other schools within our school district? And I think that whenever we look at that, I think that and we're proposing a 6-12 environment that connects academics and academies. I think that what we're proposing is a way to ensure success for all students, that all students have the same opportunity. And I think that it helps not only move McLaughlin, it helps Spook Hill, and it also helps the Lake Wales area, because the students down in that area, choice is really not a choice down there because of the geographic limitations. So again, back to the ask today is that is this something that the board has appetite for us continuing to work on and bringing back a proposal within about 6 to 8 weeks, where we've met with McLaughlin staff and stakeholders, and also meet some with Spook Hill on the vertical alignment.
So, thank you, team. I want to thank you all for that. So today what they're doing, this is the concept that you see before you. And to continue to move in the work forward, we said we still need to meet with the community and the school and go back. And then have this come back before you. There's no vote today, but to have it come back before you for more questions to be answered. And then to progress, and I see Marianne is jumping up back there for input. But this is what it's about. So there's not a vote today, and I know there needs to be discussion around this.
you know, we need to have some discussion about it.
Ms.
Ms. Fields?
Well, one of the things that I think that needs to happen when we come back, and thank you guys, and yes, the answer is yes, Dr. Ace. Those kids would have an opportunity to have the arts, whereas at Harrison and others, they have to audition. But here, they don't have to audition, so yes, your answer is correct. I think that when we come back, we need to have the historical perspective of how McLaughlin became a fine arts school. How much money was invested in the school, and what did it look like before it was changed to the fine arts school? I don't, especially for some of the board members, they might not know that.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what happened, that the dream that the staff and whoever else had has kind of like been diverted, and now you're trying to get back on track.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I think it's going to be very critical that we get input from the staff, from the parents, and from the community as you proceed, in my opinion.
Yes, ma'am. Let me kind of, if you don't mind, let me take just a second to kind of talk about that for a minute. You know, whenever we're trying to flesh out a concept like this, I know the question is, do you go to the school first or do you come to the school board first? And I think that what the superintendent was wanting to do was we had some input from staff, but really we need to know if this is something the school board has appetite for based on what we got. So we really got to do a lot of work with stakeholders down there, and we got to get the staff really engaged and busy. So your feedback is, I think, is well taken, and we got to get on them.
I had a question about community. As far as back as July in our minutes, we've talked about meeting with that community and seeing what their needs were and what they were desiring. Have we done any community meetings yet?
Well, each one of the schools has a SAC committee, and they actually bring in different community members for that. And I think that whenever we go to a change like this, Ms. Miller, I think that we would have to be, I think, a little more outreaching with that and making sure that I think that the district also has a plan on that, and has a plan and a hand in that as we go forward.
I had a question about what you described in the academies is what we've all talked about, the delivery model of support being available for students, even letting and allowing them to access the academies. Are we doing that anywhere else at this point?
Yes, ma'am. The academies is not a new concept for us. At the next school board meeting, we're actually asked Mr. Cochran to come forward with an informational item for y'all for us to be able to talk about what academies we have in place at all the high schools, what CTE programs vertically aligned 6 through 12. And so, yes, we do. And I guess to just further accentuate that point would be, we're actually number 2 in the nation with academies.
Yeah, I understand we have academies. Our support delivery, so students who need supports at 16% ESE, that would need extra reading, extra math, do we currently have a model where they are allowed into the academies and the delivery of the support is in the academy?
There's nothing that we have that does not allow students with ESE to be in any academy. Depending on what level of service that they're being provided in their IEP, if they can attend a regular class, they can be in an academy.
Through inclusion. But I think, Ms. Miller, one of the things that I think where you're going with this is I think it needs to be more strategic and more purposeful, ensuring that all students have access to it. We've been currently working on that data piece and pulling it. And I think that you've got to be purposeful about that area when you're looking at it, and we intend to be that way.
Because I think you would also, the delivery model, the supports would increase. If you have 16% at that school, which is higher.
It's actually 14%.
It's 14%. The behavior supports and those dollars and things that would need to increase to deliver any level of support. If you're talking about this is a great program you described as far as all abilities, varying abilities being involved. That might require additional supports that aren't currently there, or that level of funding would be what I would like to see considered.
Right, but keep in mind that my opinion on it, and I guess my theory of practice has always been that all means all. And if we're going to have a program in place, that we need to make sure we set up the programs to where that all students can access and be successful with it. So I think that the supports that should be in place at a school would be conducive for a student to be included in any CTE program, arts program that we have. So I think that I don't see it as an extra, but I see it as what should be there anyway.
And one last thing, do you have the number of students that come from Winter Haven or come from outside of Lake Wales at McLaughlin?
Okay, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. The students that from Lake Wales going to Winter Haven? or
No,
Winter
the
Haven
students
going
that
to
come from southeast Winter Haven to McLaughlin instead of Denison.
I haven't pulled that, but I'd be glad to get staff to work on it for us.
Okay.
And
But-
thought about the other way.
Dr. X, I want to kind of go back to Mrs. Miller's question about all the students being included. And I think the program, how we designed it here was because of that high number of students that are down there.
It's large, yes.
It's large, but that is something we need to look at. And I think what you're going to hear from Mr. Cochran is that how we're trying to reshift some of that to look at making sure we include those students in these other programs as well.
We recently made an emphasis in our winter CTE training on working with the differently abled students.
Mr. Townsend, then Ms. Reynolds.
Just a couple of sort of like logistical things. So there's not I assume there's not a regional here. Would this roll up to you, Carolyn, or would it roll up to who's the?
Is under Ms. Barnes.
Ms. Barnes.
She's on the plan.
Okay. And in reading the plan, and maybe this is just the way it was phrased, like the middle school stays zoned, like it's a. But I got the impression the high school wasn't exactly zoned. Is it like what does roll up mean? What is the form that takes?
So any student that would be zoned for McLaughlin would be zoned for McLaughlin High School. Piece in there, which would be a 612.
Okay, so it would be like just building a new high school from scratch.
No, it would be because you already have the building, you have all the components.
I mean in terms of zoning it, like it's just like Idris Ridge when we built that. It was built to serve a zone population.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Right. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. And I just want to check the numbers you gave on the busing again. Was that you said 470 high school students?
We said 470 students currently being bussed out. That I didn't say specifically high school.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's total then.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess the other thing to ask is how does the DOE status, the turnaround status, play into this? What's the what potential does DOE have to come in and screw this up?
They don't. They don't. We're coming up down the road that in our planning and what we've proposed to you and the way we'd approach it come next year, the DOE could not have any kind of adverse effect on this particular planning.
Have we been in contact with the DOE about this concept at all?
I have not, but I specifically know the statute and the turnaround procedures.
I guess just one last thing along those lines. This is certainly one approach to the transport. I mean, this deals with the transportation issue that I've been talking about for a long time. But there is another approach, and this doesn't. I wasn't even thinking about this for Bach McLaughlin, but I had some discussions with a DOE guy who talked about the possibility of zoning schools for the chart, like you flip things around, where they become the opt-out school and we're the opt-in school. That's also a way of dealing with this. I think that's got applications, perhaps for their elementary schools at some time. And I know this is not exactly related to this, but there are ways. Being at that forum 3 weeks ago or so, or a month and a half ago, however long it's been now, it became pretty clear to me that our staff don't like each other much. I didn't get a sense of a lot of productive discussion. I would really like, if we're going to pursue this, and it's interesting, that we set up some kind of regular, ongoing collaboration board between staffs out there, because more so than other charter divides, theirs is oriented around geography, and they talk about it being oriented around geography. It's frustrating always be in a competitive posture. And you know, I'm gonna have to digest this because it does scratch some itches that we need to scratch. But there's got to be a way to be more collaborative, and that's what I would like to see as part of any condition of moving forward on this. Is some way that we're at least talking with them regularly.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
As far as looking at the academies, I think all of these are awesome. The arts is my sweet spot, so I love it. The one thing I would ask, and I'm not sure if there's a reason why it's only on the Polytechnic Academy side, but entrepreneurship, if that could be combined, because every director, scenic designer, costumer, prop designer, stage manager, light designer, sound designer,
That came up.
choreographer we employ is self-employed. And I can speak, I think, for most of them pretty well, would have loved to have some business classes when they were taking their dance classes to say, you know, this is the best practice or this is, and a lot of them come straight, you know, they graduate from high school and start coming and working in our shop or painting or things like that. So I just think it'd be a really cool program to be able to offer some business for them.
That was probably misidentified and should have been shifted towards
Right.
the center.
Right.
There's not really much room left in that column, so I figured it may have ended up there just to make it look
That
even.
was one of
but
the requests
Well,
too.
what I can see exactly what you're saying is a program that we'd like to develop, an entrepreneurial academy, which is an academy where you can actually be in other academies. You can be participating in the arts, or you could be learning about business. But that would be another one of those connecting courses.
I just know very few artists who have an employer. Most of them, unless they're teaching one of our arts classes, I think are self-employed. So giving them a little bit of background would be great. From my other job, it would be great.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, the first time I read this, it was like, wow, come a long way. I would just like to echo a little bit about what Mr. Townsend said. I think this is a true opportunity for competition in the Lake Wales community. And I thought the direction we were trying to look at was more of a collaborative type of thing, and not divide the community any more than it already is. And in my opinion, with this program, we've definitely drawn the line in the sand. We are saying not only are we going to stay strong at McLaughlin and further enhance the programs, we are now going to additionally create high school opportunities as well, so a seamless K through 12 educational system. So it was quite interesting when I read that. I was like, wow, okay, we're really in competition mode is essentially what, I mean, boiling it down, however you put it, whatever programs, the bottom line is, we're here to stay, Polk County School District in Lake Wales, and we're gonna not only meet your expectations, we're gonna exceed them, and we're gonna continue in the competitive mode now on the high school level. So I do need some time. I'll tell you, I read it for the first time this weekend, and I too want to chew on it, so to speak. There's a lot of things to consider. I understand the finances and all that, and I did read somewhere about the collaboration with the Lake Wales Arts Center, which when I ran it years ago, we did a lot of work with McLaughlin at the time in having artists and stuff be able to do showcases and things for our children at no cost, asking them to stay an extra day and provide concerts and things. But anyway, so I think there's a lot of wonderful opportunities there, certainly, if we go in this direction. My other question, my real question is, that's my comments, this is an incredible model. It really is. I mean, the way it was worded, the way it was put together, kudos to whoever prepared this presentation. I love the way the words were used, differently abled. I've never heard those words before, and it just, Huh?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And I wondered, is this model being taken from someplace else? Is this a model that is in another one of our schools? I just may not know about it, and that's fine. Or did we look at this model somewhere in the state of Florida? Because this is, I mean, I wish I could have this in every school, but okay, I get we're all different. So tell me, how did we get to this point?
So
And I know there's the history. I know the history.
Yeah, I would think that when we're looking at this, there was a couple of places that we actually cited in here that are what I would call model schools for this, whether it's High Tech U or the other one that's put in here. So there's some national models out there, but what we do know and that what we've gotten really good at is the academy piece.
Oh, yes.
And we know that the
Yes.
engagement on that.
Yes.
So I think what we're trying to do is saying if we were really building these academies for the ground up, then we'd build that overlay purposefully in there. And because McLaughlin would still stay a smaller 612, it
Yes.
kind of lends itself to that. Like if you look at a Frostproof or you look at Fort Meade, the beauty of those environments is they leverage their resources. And that's why I think that they're able to meet the students' needs because they know them so much better. So I think knowing what we know about academies, knowing what Carolyn has talked about as far as these model environments, which I'm very familiar with, so we know they're out there. And really, this would be something, a goal that we'd try to achieve, almost schools within a school at any high school
Right,
that we would have.
right.
Yes, ma'am.
With
We'll
a
talk
high
about
arts
that.
component, which I understand the history. So
Yes, ma'am.
very interesting. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful presentation and report.
Ms. Fortney and Mr. Wilson, I don't know who had the hand first.
Back to the forum that we had in Lake Wales, I
Yes,
believe
ma'am.
this whole question came up to both boards. Would anybody be willing to do a 6 through 12 academy
ma'am.
at McLaughlin? Yeah, I wrote that question.
That's great. We will.
Right. So obviously, and you know, this kind of reminds me of the MYPIB kind of model in its own way, where we take the best, this is really awesome, where you take the best of everything and put it into one thing. Our new school out in Davenport, I don't know if y'all have some sort of bugging device on my back porch, but I was just talking with another teacher, and we were, you know, kind of talking about the high school out there and how it's going to be this and that and the other. And I said ideally, and there was a roll of toilet paper sitting there, and literally I said, in my ideal world, math and science would be right here in the middle of the toilet paper ring, and all of these things would come out of it like this. And this is the closest thing I've seen to that. But you talk about drawing a line in the sand. You know, I think when they put an IB school at Lake Wales, that was the line. That's
Mr.
what I'm
Wilson?
saying.
So I'm going to go on record as saying that I'm not in favor of it, and I'm not in favor of moving forward with it, and I can't support it. It sounds like I'm going to be in the minority here, but I want to go on record as saying that. We spent a lot of money at McLaughlin previously, and that was not fruitful for us. And it's not because we didn't make a tremendous effort. It's not because we don't have great teachers there. It's because of the dynamics in the community. And whoever drew the line, once we do this, there's going to be a shoving match that our students are going to pay for. And I'm very concerned about that. I'm thinking about what Mr. Townsend said, and the importance of working together collaboratively to find a solution there. No matter how we slice this, it's going to cost money, and that's money that could be used for mental health counselors, for psychologists, for other areas that we won't have, and that's just going to be a reality. But you know, one of the things that Mr. Townsend went to the DOE, and I know you sent some information out. I looked through it. It seems to me that one of the things that you were talking about is treating charter schools as schools of last resort. And I think that is what we, in my opinion, what we should be pursuing, because it changes the dynamics of the relationship between charter schools and zone schools in the entire state of Florida. Right here in Polk County, we have an opportunity to change that dynamic, and put charter schools and zone schools on equal footing by making charter schools schools of last resort. So that would be, that's the direction that I would be interested in pursuing. And I don't know where we go with that. I don't know how that looks in the long run, but if we can go down that path. There seems to be a sentiment in Tallahassee of finding a way to put charter schools and I'm going to call them zone schools on equal footing as it relates to their ability to remove students who, for whatever reason, they're not happy having there. And so I think that's the core issue, and I think that's what we should be looking at fixing. So if you're asking for consensus, I'm not in favor of moving forward with this.
Ms. Fortney.
I just want to throw this out into the universe. Bach North is looking for a facility, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. And we have a huge facility, and they're more STEM oriented with their science and math and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm just throwing it out in the universe. If you want to look for collaboration, maybe they do the poly part and we do the art part. I mean, I don't know. I just want to put it out there because, they're all our kids.
Right.
Whether they attend Lake Wales Charter or McLaughlin Middle, share the facility. I don't know. Just something to think about as a collaborative move.
Ms. Reynolds?
I love this idea. I love that we will no longer have 9th through 12th graders in Lake Wales that have no option but to leave Lake Wales to go to school. I love seeing them in Winter Haven, but at the same time, being on a bus round trip every day to drive all the way to Winter Haven or Bartow or Frostproof or wherever it is that they end up being bussed out to isn't good for any of them. I think that by pulling out of Lake Wales at the middle school or the high school level, where essentially that's how many students are at McLaughlin now? 600?
650.
That's 650 that's going to be an additional to those 470. Maybe Bach North will pick some of them up, but there's a lot of kids in Winter Haven that are applying for Bach still too, so who's to say that those seats will all go to Lake Wales students? I think that we need to have a solution in Lake Wales, kindergarten through 12th grade, that there is not a single student who lives in a community that's having to get bussed out and go 20 or 30 minutes away for school. It's just kind of crazy to me that there's ever been a time that we're saying, your community doesn't want you to go to school here, so you have to go down the road. That no student deserves that, and I think by not providing them an opportunity to go to school in their own backyard, we're failing those students.
Ms. Fields?
Well, we say competition is good
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to choices, so to me, this is good. And I went to McLaughlin, and I've been there a couple of times, and I would encourage the other board members that have not gone, and maybe y'all all have gone. And I wanted to pose a question, whose idea was this? But I want to know. And it stems from some of the staff members. So this is not anything that was created by you all. You all just took their thoughts and you put it on paper. I personally believe no matter what we decide to do today, we have got to include the people who work day in and day out in that community, in that school. Right across the way from their school, you have a housing complex. Surround it. We have got to go to them. They didn't come to the meeting in Lake Wales. They weren't there. Whatever the reasons may be, they weren't there. They should have been. Maybe they didn't know about it. I don't know. But I really think that we need to make sure that we hear from the people who work day in and day out with those kids. And hear from the kids too. And I think the bottom line is what you said, Dr. Ace. With those kids up on that screen have the same opportunity in a different environment. And you know as well as I, the answer is no. This is rolling them from middle school directly into high school without having to audition. I know firsthand girls from Girls Inc. this audition for Harrison, they didn't make it. And it broke them. I know that. This is a way not to break the kids. And we don't want any broken kids.
Mr. Townsend, then back to Ms. Miller.
Just to address Sarah's point for a second, under no circumstances ever would I support pulling out of Lake Wales in a way that leaves no zone school. What we're talking about, what Lynn was talking about was the possibility of forcing zoning on the Lake Wales schools. Therefore limiting their ability to pull people in, making them take the kids they have. That's one possible option. You know, the fact that this is a zoned high school makes it more attractive to me. You know, to me, I don't care who runs these schools. I don't. I want the kids in the Lake Wales area to be able to go to school in high quality schools in Lake Wales. It's always been what mattered to me. However, let's think this through. I think we got to be honest with ourselves. What happens if this works? Okay, you have what 650 kids, and say 600 of them end up enrolling to the. You're taking 600 kids away from Lake Wales High, which means they're going to go recruit all up in the Northeast, all up in Winter Haven. These are things we have to think through. If it doesn't work, then we've spent all this money for what? And again, this is not me saying don't want to do it. It's me saying these are things we got to be serious about thinking through. And you know, I'm not at all convinced we couldn't figure out a way to do this collaboratively with them. You know, like they want these kind of programs. You know, I don't struggled to get any traction at all with the kind of staff level collaboration I was hoping to see. So I don't know what the path is to doing that. But just I just wanted you to understand. I'm not talking about pulling out of it's reclassifying who's who. And I think the whole McLaughlin relationship would have been the last thing I would do. Like if this whole concept of zoning would have started with Lake Wales High, because it's the one that's easy. You lock them in, and then we figure something out collaboratively at the McLaughlin level. But I'm never going to vote for having no zone middle school or no zone high school in Lake Wales. Just so you understand it.
Okay, I respond.
Go ahead.
Well, we currently, I know we have to get to security, we currently have no zoned high school in Lake Wales,
Correct.
which I think
Right.
is a problem. And to your point,
you're right,
I
it
would
is.
much rather have a zoned high school where every kid in Lake Wales has a home to go to, and have them bringing in kids that are choosing to leave their zoned school and drive 30 minutes to go to school, than them forcing kids to go out of town, if that makes sense. If we have all of the kids in Lake Wales are saying, we're going to go to McLaughlin now, it's the best school in the world,
Right.
I would rather Lake Wales High School as a charter school be recruiting kids from outside, and kids saying, hey, I want to go there, I'm going to drive 30 minutes, and making the choice themselves, much like kids do at Harrison, that are coming from Davenport, or Christina drives from Lake Wales, that they make that option to leave your community. There's a huge difference to me in making an option to leave your community and being told there's nowhere for you to go to school
Correct.
here, you have to go 30 minutes away.
Or longer.
That's the part, or longer.
Or longer.
And that's the part that really makes me squirm and lose sleep at night, is that there's kids that are on the bus for an hour
Right.
because
That's
we
my,
have nowhere
that's
to put them.
my number. And this isn't going to address that for 5 years.
Right. And
So
it's,
I
but it's,
mean, this is whereas
we have to start somewhere.
well, if we zoned Lake Wales High School tomorrow, we get in this tomorrow.
but that's, and this is probably a Wes question, that would be a statutory change, Wes?
There's going to be, there will be all kinds of
Yeah.
statutory questions, and
Okay.
I will
just
put
do
this
that.
out there that, on the one hand, you're going to have a conversation about the law, and on the other, you're going to have a conversation about politics.
Right.
And right now, the law says something pretty clear about this. The question is there anybody in the executive branch who chooses to enforce it? Is there anybody in the legislative branch who chooses to change it? And those will be questions that you have to face.
Go to Ms. Miller, she's been waiting.
I'm gonna agree with Ms. Cunningham. I'm not ready to go either way on this. I would like to see those community meetings that we asked for in July and in September and October. And I also, when you bring the history back, I would like to talk about the dollars we've already put into that school, because this is a great, I mean, this is a pie in the sky. This is an amazing opportunity. None of that funding is really, we haven't confirmed any of that could take place, so maybe the program would look differently, depending on how the dollars come in. And then I'm from Winter Haven, and I think of Denison and Westwood, and what dollars could do for those schools. Because I know people that drive from Southeast Winter Haven to McLaughlin because of the ESC services to avoid Denison and Westwood. And so I want to see I'd like to see the numbers of how many people are going out, out of Winter Haven to McLaughlin. And I would like the history on how many dollars we've spent already into this school, because we're not going to change. There's a component we're not going to change, like community involvement. You know, these are great things, but it's still going to take much more than what these grants could bring in. So I would like more time. I would like another work session that we have more time.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And we will, and we want to present the concept, and that's why I said we will be bringing that information back with you that you've asked for. I have a list, and if you have any additional questions that you would have like for the team to address, please send those to us, and we'll get those to you. Okay. All right, thank you guys. Mr. Perone. Yeah.
So my question is that because it said all over this shit last night,
It's locked. Rob is going around.
but are they?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Try to be brief. We asked to be on the workshop because we have the governor's budget. Not that it means a whole lot now, or will, because we have so much coming up. But we wanted to get that in front of you and go over that, have Jason do the line item and what the governor's budget means, and then we'll continue to come back as the Senate and the House come in.
Yeah, I would just say in years past, the governor's budget has been more robust than what the legislature finally passes. And when you look at this budget that the governor's presented, it's a little disheartening. So this was on the agenda, so you probably had a chance to look at it already. And I won't spend much time on this, and you can ask questions if you have them. But this represents, if you look here at the state base student allocation, the governor has suggested a $50 increase in the BSA. Based on our current DCD, we would receive about $48.54 and an increase in the BSA. That's a 1.2% increase in the base student allocation. A couple things I've highlighted here. If you remember, last year we received a one-time funding compression allocation of $7.7 million, which goes away in the new year. So we lose that $7.7 million right off the top. One of the other things the governor did, the second line that I've highlighted, best and brightest allocation. You're familiar with that bonus program that our teachers get. Before, this was not in our budget. It was in the state's budget. So they have now made it sort of like a categorical in our own budget. So if you go down to the very bottom, just go down to the bottom line, you see about a 17.5, I've got 17.9 million in total new revenue at the very bottom. 14.8 or almost 15 million of that is that best and brightest allocation. So it's not 15, that $15 million is not new money to us. It's just in our budget now. So that it makes it look like we're getting 17.9 million. If you take away that best and brightest allocation, it leaves us with about $6.7 million in new revenue. I'm sorry.
No, less than
It
that.
leaves us with about 3.1.
Three, yeah.
I'm looking at my notes over here.
17 minus 4.
Look at my notes over here. $3.1 million in new revenue. One other thing I'd like to point out
is McKay scholarships. If you look here at 18-19, $6.7 million, almost $6.8 million, the state held back to pay those vouchers for those students that are using the McKay scholarship. That comes right off out of our revenue. It doesn't show up in their calculations. So the reason I like to point that out is we'll have about $7 million that will come out of our revenue to pay for McKay scholarships next year. So that $3.1 million in new revenue,
We're ahead.
take it back down by the 7 million, we will be starting off, based on the governor's budget, we will be starting off with $3.6 million less revenue next year, without even getting into an increase in expenses.
So our big point here is that we're concerned that folks are seeing that 17.9 and that's discretionary for our budget, and it really isn't. So that's our main point, and we'll continue to bring you the Senate and the House. Hopefully they'll be better. I'm not holding my breath again, but usually, as Jason's saying, the governor's is usually the one we look at and say, well, hopefully we'll get that funding. This is not good.
Ms. Fields?
So now the funding compression allocation was spearheaded by Senator Sargent. Are we having conversation with her?
I know Wendy's working on that, yes, and we knew that that was pretty much gonna come out. And we said it last year when we got it, that we're gonna need to push that next year to become recurring, because they said it was one time, and there's also legislation on the DCD, changing that formula that Wendy just updated. We haven't had a conversation on what that looks like or how it could help or hurt, so we'll get into that also and bring that to you next month.
I know on our legislative FSBA phone call on Friday, they mentioned that the Senate had a press conference that basically their plan is the same as the governor's plan. I don't know if Wendy can elaborate on any of that.
Their plan on vouchers is very similar to what the
Did it say anything? They didn't send it to us. They just talked about it. Did it give any indicators of budgeting and just that? I would assume if their priorities are the same as the governor's, that your budget typically aligns with your priorities, but typically.
Any other questions?
Can you explain the McKay scholarship holdback again? Is that new?
So when students use the McKay scholarship to go, it shows up in our revenue here, so it looks.
Oh, I see.
They just take it. We don't really get that you can reduce our revenue by 6.7 million.
Right, it's just a pass through.
It's just.
Have you in the past put that in, or is this a new look you're giving us?
No, I always, and interestingly, we had seen McKay go up about $1 million a year. It's been around for about 10 years.
Right.
And it had reached a peak 2 years ago of a little over 8 million. This is the first really year we've seen it decrease.
That's interesting.
Like that. So I'm happy that we at least understand.
Ms. Miller?
Do you think that's to do with the gardener? They're going to a different voucher. They're going to one that's created for companies to dump money in to avoid taxes, which isn't these dollars. So I think that's where the change might have been. It's been reduced by people switching from McKay to Gardner. Do you think so, Dr. Steinke?
Well, I think it's that, and I also think it's that they were originally using the McKays to go to private schools, and the private schools can't provide the services that public schools can. So they're coming back to public schools and then using Gardner for those additional services.
Right.
So yes, I agree with you.
Well, they can't use Gardner.
Can I at your leisure, you know, at your leisure, like sometime in the next month, it would be great to have a historical track of any of Gardner and McKay, just kind of historical trend on that, because that's very interesting to me. And I guess we better start tracking it for normal vouchers now too. So.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. The next item is our security, which we're going to go into executive. So if we want to have a 5-minute transition break.
Yes, please.
Okay.
The naming of Auburndale High School, will that be on the regular agenda next?
Yes, it should be on
Because it's
the
an
next.
information item here.
Right.
Just
So-
in-
I just have a question about that.
Mhm.
Quick.
It's your school.
Well, yes, and I've been in contact with the school, and I've never met this gentleman, but I'm very glad to help name this. The question I have is, in the last retreat that I sat in with you, the last 2 retreats with the district, with the board, they've talked about possibly. I hate to keep naming things after people, and then we keep discussing the idea of lease agreements to generate revenue, and then sell the name on a lease agreement. Is that still something the board is going to discuss? Revenue generation by leasing out names of facilities? That's been talked about in the last
Yeah.
2.
And so that was a recommendation or an idea that was stated at the retreat as well. But I understood it to be more like corporations and.
Yes,
and
it
for
would
the
be.
big- Okay.
But I would hate to then sell the lease to
I
call
see
it
what
something
you're
else.
saying,
The ARPA
No,
Funding Center would go
that's
to.
But you could do it like Florida, you know, it's, or Steve Spurrier Field at,
It was at a-
Blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Okay.
Or a wing
it was at a-
I've seen.
Yeah.
of school.
And
rather
what's
than the
this?
whole-
Are we talking about doing
What's
that
the
for a
Oklahoma Center
building?
now?
We talked about football
Yeah.
fields or
Fields.
buildings. It was open because it's done corporate fleet, our white fleet. We talked about wrapping the white fleet. But generating revenue through selling of is a very different concept. Private schools do it. And we discussed it, and I thought, well, I hate to keep naming buildings if we're gonna sell it off as, State Farm Stadium or something, you know what I mean? After we've named it after a
At
dear
Joe
gentleman.
Parrish.
Yeah, that's right. State Farm Stadium at Joe Parrish Field.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
But I think that's.
It's a win-win.
that's how I
Right.
would
Okay.
do it.
Okay, moving on to the agenda review, are there any questions or suggestions to changes to the minutes? Any of the sets of minutes? We have 3 sets of minutes. Everybody okay with the minutes? Yes, ma'am.
I do. I just have a comment on something that I guess has fallen under the consent agenda, but I don't want to pull it. I just have a comment on it. Can I make that at this time?
Sure, well, let's start with the minutes. Any
Okay.
questions about any discussion about the minutes? Are we okay with the minutes? Any changes, amendments to the minutes? Okay? Other than that, we'll move on to, I'll just open up the entire agenda in case somebody has questions about anything. So at this time,
Yeah, I just have one question. I want to give Mrs. Usher another accommodation just for all of the work that she does because it's amazing, and I've learned a little bit more about the details of all of what her job consists of. We've talked about the land purchase in Davenport, and I think, my opinion is that she has worked hard to negotiate a lower rate than what was originally established. In the future, I think and this goes along with what we talked about earlier today about contracts, I would like to see like a third appraisal when we get them in that are so far apart, but we're gonna have to schedule stuff in advance enough to do that. That's my only comment on that. We're not, and by any means, we overpaid for Citrus Ridge, in my opinion, and you've saved us from not doing that again. I would like to help support those decisions with a third appraisal in the future if they come that far apart. That's just a business comment that I have for that.
okay. Any other questions or comments about agenda items? I have one, Madam Superintendent, and,
Any?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And I don't need an answer right now, but maybe you could get an answer. And I'm looking at this non-cash donation of an airplane, and it's got a certificate that it's airworthy. It doesn't look to be airworthy. It says, and not only is it airworthy, there are
We do not have a
it's subject
private
to
plane
no issues whatsoever.
You
But
keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Oh, okay. And see, then maybe the answer. I don't know.
Was it 2 CFAA, do you know
Uh,
what number it is?
It's C85.
I don't know if this helps at all, but in a recent meeting I was at, they just had a plane donated for their students to work on.
Yeah,
And
Travis.
it's as a
Travis
cluster,
work.
yeah, with
They
those
do
two.
tinker
So I
with it.
don't know if that helps with the
It's got an
explanation, but.
airworthy.
So
I mean,
we
it looks
do
like
not-
it's
we
fine.
do not own a plane that we can fly.
Okay, very good. Moving on. Anybody else have any questions or comments about agenda items?
I think it's on the consent 107, revised bus attendant and attendant substitute job description.
Yes.
I read that a couple of times, and it said it's gonna go from a 9th grade requirement to a high school or GED and how that would open up the, wealth of people who might be able to apply. I thought maybe that was written backwards.
And we discussed that at a
Yeah, we think we
previous,
did.
I
It was
do.
at a work session.
it was gonna be
It's
rewritten,
actually
I thought.
reducing the requirements.
It's, I read it a couple of times, y'all, and it looked like
That
it's
says
increasing.
change the education requirement from completion of ninth grade to completion of high school.
So you're raising the requirement, and your
Right.
concern is you're not gonna open the
Oh.
pool
You
of
see my
applicants.
point?
We had this discussion though, I think.
We
I think We
did.
had this exact
Yeah.
discussion.
And it was gonna be
it was-
reworded.
Reworded.
Yeah, there was a,
What did it get?
That's the way it's supposed to be, because we're trying to match what the bus
The drivers.
drivers, and so there's a, instead of saying that having to have a ninth grade education to be appointed, they don't have to have a ninth grade education, they don't have to have a GED or a high school diploma to be appointed, but we will work with them to try to get their high school diploma and GED.
Well, I sure didn't
So
read it
it's-
that way.
That it's saying education requirements to a preferred.
Oh, they're
The high
saying they're
school
gonna
is
take it from a
preferred.
requirement
It's
to
no
now it'll
longer
be
a requirement.
preferred.
There's no
Okay.
requirement now.
So
Okay.
that you can get them on.
Preferred.
So I kept looking,
Yeah.
I must have read it 10 times last night. Okay, thank you.
It does
That's
say
all.
preferred. I just stopped reading.
Yes, sir. I haven't forgot you. Mr. Townsend, did you have an agenda item question?
just, and maybe this is more looking ahead, like, I think to Lisa's point, and all, you know, we've got some of the facility stuff tonight, I think it might make sense in the next few months to have a work session about how we're gonna choose, people moving ahead with sales tax. I mean, I think there's, you know, I would be interested in learning what the procedures are on how long, for instance, like what are the presentations like for our architects, or you know, what's sort of a blueprint of how the sales tax is gonna unfold operationally, and also potentially to, frankly, to see if there's a way to build in intentionally, in a very open way, a preference for local builders
Agreed.
or our architects. I mean, I'm not, in one that's meaningful. I think the you know, we need to do that publicly and above board and think it through. And I don't have any problem with how anything's been done so far. I just think as we look ahead, that would be a good thing to all get on the same page about.
That is a really good idea. It has been a long time since we've had a public discussion about selection processes, and they're different for architecture and construction than they are for others. That is an excellent idea.
So we'll have that on the future.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Well,
any,
weren't they on the vendors, all of them were on the vendors list, it's already been approved anyways, right?
that's just an approved vendor.
That's
list.
just
That's what I'm saying.
Approved
Yeah.
vendors.
But if they're building, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, if they're building a school, they can submit an application if they're not on the pre-approved vendors list.
That's correct.
Okay.
The pre-approved vendors, just if we need a sink
A
fixed
roof,
or
yeah, roof done.
Well, no, there's like
Quick
concrete,
maintenance.
there's like everything.
Everything.
a sidewalk
That's-
fixed, something.
what I was wondering.
Just how we're picking
$1,000.
vendors, and how we can build in local, from my point of view, how we can build in local preference while also making sure we're getting good product and not getting
Sure, I
taken
think,
advantage of.
I think that just makes good sense because they're supporting our community.
Correct,
That's right.
right, and it's
Absolutely.
coming from
Like when
our
we
sales
keep-
tax, not from
Yeah,
Tallahassee,
to
you
keep
know.
paying
And their
taxes.
kids go to our school.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I think in the past we have had that.
Yes.
We do have a category for local preference,
where they get
more points if they're
local. Yes.
We do have a category for that.
Yeah.
And we incorporate that, but there's a whole lot more than just local. It's a bonding capacity, and a lot of our local companies can even post a bond for
Yeah.
a 75 million school. So we just try to look at who does the best presentation, the resources, but we do give preference for local contractors.
Yeah, but isn't it true that what they'll do is an outside firm will partner with a local
They do
business?
get preference for that also,
Okay.
they do.
Okay.
Just be good to work through.
Yeah, we just need to have a discussion about it. Ms. Fields?
I think Ms. Jackie already answered this, or Mr. Hill before, but the increase in the rental for the RP funding centers because we added more high schools. Cause last year it was like 100 and some,
Right.
it's almost like double.
And it's not just we added more high schools,
Security.
it's the security that RP is
That's
now,
all.
that's the other
$80,000.
one.
That's crazy.
It's the
Yeah.
security.
Prices going up.
Wow.
Yeah. And Harrison's is more than the other schools. Rest are 9 and Yuki's 10,000.
I can tell you, Ms. Fields, one of the things that I discussed with Mike Perone and I mentioned to Tony Camarella is I want to see if we can do one contract because we do read to read.
Yes.
We have, we do trainings there, we have graduations there. I do want to get
Amen.
into one, we can do just one contract.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Any other questions or comments about this evening's agenda? Right, moving on. Mr. Bridges, you have something, Mr. Bridges has something he needs our consensus on.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I forwarded to you an email having to do with Hurricane Irma claims. And these are important. I hate following the conversation that we had with Sheriff Judd because some things are life and death and others are just money. But I wanted to talk to you briefly about that. You'll recall that a couple of months ago you retained John Stidham and Tina Nicholson because we were sued in federal court by our insurance company. And I was gratified they persuaded the insurance company to drop that lawsuit. So the insurance side of that is rocking along. In the meantime, the FEMA claims are something different. And we've been learning about this as we go. What we get from FEMA is in the nature of grant funds, public works grant funds. They're discretionary with FEMA. In other words, we don't get these as a matter of right. We ask for them, and if we're good boys and girls, they may give us some of it. Our risk management department has been working diligently with FEMA and with the Florida Department of Environmental Management in pursuing those. But it has been telegraphed to us that they may deny a number of our work projects. And the way they define work projects are by individual building. It's not by campus. It wouldn't say Lakeland High School. It would say the gym at Lakeland High School or classroom wing or shop or whatever. But it's been projected that we may have several of those denied. There is an appellate process, but it is a bear. And there's going to be a lot of work going into it and a lot of documentation. And I know that our public adjuster has been working through some of that, but public adjusters are not generally in the business of doing appeals and things that are really in the nature of legal proceedings. And so I have spoken with John Stidham and Tina Nicholson, who were successful on the insurance side, and they've indicated that they would be willing to represent the district on any appeals that come in. The reason I'm bringing it to you right now is we can see it coming, and when the final letter comes in, the window is going to be very tight. So however many appeals you got to do all of them in 60 days. I am mindful that our next school board meeting is 21 days from now. So if we get that letter tomorrow, we're going to already be down, if we wait until the next board meeting, we'll be down by a third of the time that it takes to respond. I am in a position to bring to you this evening, if you wish, a representation agreement with them, or you could authorize the superintendent to execute one. But once again, they have indicated a willingness to do it for a contingency fee of 3% of any successful recoveries. In other words, they would not recover any. They would not be paid anything if they did not recover on any one appeal, and it would be appeal by appeal. It's not a global thing. One interesting thing is, once again, this operates like a grant. And you'll recall that typically in grants, there's an administrative fee provision in that grant. There is in this one as well, under the new regs, there's a 5% administrative fee that would cover costs like this. So what I'm suggesting to you is, if you wish to get in front of this and give our folks their best shot at being successful, I would be happy to bring that to you this evening.
As an emergency item?
I could just bring it off the attorney's report. You can amend the agenda to add it.
What was the second option?
the second option was you can authorize the superintendent to enter into a representation agreement for this purpose.
And does that require a formal vote also?
I would suggest that you do it, and the reason I do it that way is, you know, if the agreement that's been proposed is 3 pages long, we can add it. The board can vote on it if you wish. If you would prefer not to do that, you authorize the superintendent to enter into it, simply because we don't know what the dollar value of it may be, and it may ultimately exceed her contractual authority.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board here? Do we want to amend the agenda and approve that contract this evening?
Can you go ahead and amend it
Sure.
now?
Yeah, I can ask
So-
for it. What I'll do,
Do it.
Ms. Cunningham, is at the board meeting off my report,
Yes.
I'll ask the chair to find cause on the record to amend the agenda and add that. I'll go ahead and get Beverly to add it to the agenda.
Can't you do it with the items, revise the agenda with the items?
No, I'll get her to
noted?
put it on
Oh,
there,
yes,
but the
yes.
chair has to
Okay.
find cause.
Got it, okay.
So.
Well, there might be a third option. Why not put it for the next meeting, but if the letter comes in, just have them call it an emergency board meeting. So we just, you know, do we think it's gonna come in,
I strongly suspect that we will have it and that it will be imminent.
There's nothing paid to them unless they collect.
That's right.
Your hesitation, you seem to hesitate.
Oh, no, there's no hesitation on my part. I'm just thinking how I'm gonna do this from a practical perspective.
Yeah, what we can do, I can ask Beverly to add it to the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when it comes to my report, Mr. Chair, as we discussed at the work session,
Yes.
request that you find cause to add this item, and.
And you say you do?
What?
And then we just make
Yes,
a
ma'am.
motion and go?
Yes,
Boom,
ma'am,
boom,
and like I
boom.
said, but the essentials of it are that it is a contingency fee that would only reflect those monies that were actually recovered. The amount would be 3%, which should be covered by the administrative cost provision of the grant.
Do we think we'll have to do anything before next Tuesday, or could we make it a 5-minute special retreat, or special board meeting at the end of the retreat?
We could
and notice it?
certainly do it. I'm not sure there's, what could be gained that way.
Glenn was worried about from a
No, I
how
was
to do it.
just thinking, how do we affect that from a practical perspective? But you've explained that, so.
Yeah, we can do that, and,
Okay.
You say you find cause, and you look at us and say,
yeah, that's.
what's the
that-
pleasure of the board, and one of us makes the
And
motion.
the other thing I did want to mention is that I found out yesterday that we had received notice that FEMA intends to audit us on the other claims. So we have that waiting in the works.
Look forward.
We have no idea what that looks like at this point, but we're gonna have a FEMA audit. 4 Florida counties got tapped: Polk, Collier, Monroe, and Lee. So we're going to be audited as
Yeah.
well.
Were we particularly aggressive in our claims?
I don't think so.
We still have time, we still have to do that.
We're not gonna,
Okay.
we're gonna run out of time for comments. We'll have to.
Yeah, we'll just have to do them during the
We
meeting.
can do them during the meeting, absolutely.
Okay,
We're out of time.
okay, this is why I'm not fond of this 12-hour sessions. I can send it by email, because in public, I don't know that would, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, did you adjourn? Did we adjourn?
Yep, work session is adjourned.
Where's the gap?